Good evening, everyone. It being 7 o'clock and a quorum present, I'm going to call this meeting of the Plymouth Planning Board for Wednesday, August 14th to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency and signed into law on March 29, 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote and in-person participation. Information for remote participation by members of the public can be found on the town's website. Moving on to our first item of business tonight, that's administrative notes. We have no minutes to vote on, so I'm going to move on to Form A plans. First, we have A4881, AD Makepeace, FH Acquisition Corp., lot line adjustment for map 90, lot 43.7. Do we have any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to endorse.
We have a motion from Mr. Bennett to endorse.
Second.
Mr. Donaldson seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, and as we're all present tonight, show of hands. Favor? Unanimous. Next on the agenda is A4882, Pine Hills LLC, lot line adjustment, map 76 and 78B, lots 6A-1, 6A-2, 6A-3, 6A-4S, 6A-5A, and 5-304. Do I have any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Donaldson moves to approve.
Second.
Mr. Bennett seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Bennett? Unanimous. Next on our agenda is a street name approval, B437 Pine Hills LLC. Approval of the street name Aurora Sky. Any discussion or questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Grandy moves to approve.
Second.
Mr. Bennett seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Next on our agenda tonight is announcements. It's a new item we're putting on to try and keep the public informed of some things that are going on around town with respect to planning. First announcement, as many may have heard, Planning Board member Brigitte Keene has resigned her position. Per the town charter and state law, there will be a joint meeting of the Planning Board and Select Board to appoint someone to serve in that position until the next regular town election, which is in May of 2025, at which point someone will have to run to fill the remaining term of that position, which is 1 year. Until that appointment is made, the Planning Board, as we are currently without an associate member, will operate with 4 members. Next, pleased to report that all of the Planning Board articles passed at Springtown meeting have now been approved by the Attorney General's office. For those who weren't riveted to Springtown meeting, those were ADUs, our MBTA communities overlay districts, expansion of the downtown historic district, the extension of time for the town to decide on a demolition delay on historic buildings, and providing additional screening proposals for ground-mounted solar. Next is master plan news. So the master plan committee will next be meeting here at Town Hall on Wednesday, August 21st at 6 p.m. Following that, we have master plan pop-up events, first at the Waterfront Festival next Saturday, the 24th. They have a booth in Brewster Gardens. And then another one at the Center for Active Living on September 6th. Following that, we have a September 12 joint meeting and listening session with the Open Space Committee to discuss open space and recreation here in the town of Plymouth. That will be held at the Plymouth Public Library, and I truly hope that anyone and everyone attends that meeting. Again, this is part of our master plan process for hearing from the community. This is going to focus again on open space and recreation, and we want your input. Next, I can report that we have a Cedarville Steering Committee meeting next Wednesday, August 21st, 6 p.m. at the Cedarville Fire Station. And last, I have been asked by the chair of the Senior Task Force to announce that that committee has an opening. So those who are interested in getting involved in some of the senior issues regarding our town, please contact Michelle Brady at the Center for Active Living. She'd love to hear from you. And for other groups, if you have something that you want to have announced, please contact the planning department, and we will make sure we put it on so that the public can hear, again, some of the important goings-on in town. Next on our agenda, we have the Manomet Village Steering Committee appointment. We have Anthony Mayo, who has applied to join the Manomet Steering Committee. Mr. Mayo, if you'll come up, introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Anthony Mayo. I live and reside at 28 Highland Avenue in the village of Manomet, and I submitted an application to serve on the Manomet Steering Committee, or the Manomet Village Steering Committee, that is.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, that's a good question. Well, let's say I've lived in this town for probably 40 years, on and off. Went to high school here in Plymouth, then ventured the world in my 20s and 30s, and then resettled in Plymouth probably in the 80s, and then started a family and put my 2 kids through the public school department, or public school, and was active in the school themselves, serving as volunteering and also serving on the parent council and being involved in the school, and that took some time in terms of commitment. And then later on, I then tried to get involved in some of the town committees. I served in the capital outlay committee, and then currently I'm serving as a town meeting member and also the oversight. So my friend Bill Aritani came over to me and asked me if I was interested in serving on the steering committee, and I had some time, so I figured I'd submit the application.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. We have 2 Manomet residents here, so Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you for applying. So my first question is, you mentioned a little bit of some of the other boards and things in your town member meeting. What other past personal work experience do you have that would be useful in this position?
Well, I've had a lot of chapters of my life. I think that if I add up all my experience, I think I come to the board with a sense of pragmatism and understanding of how to compromise and understand people's position. In terms of a career background, I've done multiple things from marketing to sales to real estate. So I think it's just a life skill that I think if we all over time develop. So I think in terms of just the knowledge of the history of the town and seeing it grow within the last 20 years, it just gives me I feel like I'm in a position where I could give back to the community.
Okay. What do you think your role is on the committee? How would you define your role?
I would say just to sit there and have some vision and also hear feedback from the community in terms of what their expectations are. I read the master plan that was last issued in 10 years ago, and you can see the accomplishments of what has been done since that time, whether it's the Sims house, or whether it's recreational, or whether it's environmental, or whether it's something that has to do with the beach community. I mean, the one thing about Manomet, it's very unique. I always felt that it, it, it draws a lot of different people from different incomes. And so with that, you could be with somebody who's, a common laborer to somebody who has $1 million house on the bluff, and we kind of work together to try and achieve the one thing is to make the neighborhood better. And, and Manamet, this town has grown, but at some point, once it reaches a certain level of growth, the next thing is how to maintain it and how to just, how do I say, make it manageable, because the capacity of space is limited. And so the next is how do you create a flow that people can sort of gravitate towards without disrupting a quality of life.
Okay, and my last question is, what do you think is the most important issue right now in Manamet?
Well, I mean, obviously there's the power plant, but that's a whole different category within itself. I think that's a town issue. I would say traffic, traffic congestion is getting greater during a certain time of the day. I would say that the light at Geller's would be my first, I would come back with a recommendation, because trying to take a left on Beaver Dam Road is problematic, and it doesn't have a delay light, and I think that's probably something that the town should look into. Whether that's a planning or engineering, I'm not sure, but that's something that I would sort of bring to focus if I was appointed.
I'm in agreement with you with that light. It should be a delayed turn light for if you're coming north and you need to go to, take a left at the CVS. And actually, I have an alibi. One last question. When's the last time you've been in or visited the youth center in Manamet? And what are your feelings in regards to the facilities?
Last time I was there was when I was in high school, and I'm sure it's done. I haven't been in the facility itself in a long time. Actually, let me retract that. When my son was there a couple times, but I think it's a valuable, recreational center. I mean, I think it provides a place where kids can go after school, or drop-offs, and it's come a long way in terms of the structure of the building. There was times where the gym was just, the floors were warped. I don't know what it is now, but I think.
Well, that's why I'm asking. I'm hoping you and your other committee members will go visit.
Yeah, I mean, there was no reason for me to go inside it until my son decided not, until he aged out. But back then, it was, it was a social area. I think kids need that, whether it's that or Briggs Field or the one over at White Horse Beach. I mean, you have to have places where kids can go and play, as long as they can get there safely and without too much, hassles. Yeah. But, I mean, when I was here, I'd get on my bike and I would ride to Plymouth. That was not something that was common. Today, people probably wouldn't do that. They may just, because of the traffic situation. Even creating some type of bike trail, or not bike trail, but bike lane. If that's something that the town is looking for. But I think that's a broader, master plan, where that would require further discussion. But. I'm open to, I think, I'm open to, the Plymouth, the Manamet Youth Center has been there since I was a high school, in sophomore year in high school. And back then, there was nothing around, and that was the only place where you can, at least meet other kids. So it's a, like everything else, it's an important landmark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Grandy, questions?
I think you were asked about almost every question. Probably some more later, but I have no questions, and I appreciate you applying and also answering the questions you were just asked, and thank you very much for the dedication that you're going to for the Manamet Steering Committee and the village itself. Thank you. I always support you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Bennett.
Like Mr. Grandy, I think Mr. Donaldson covered most of my questions. The one thing I would like to put forth is that do you have a concept of what the actual, not your personal role in the committee, but what the role of the Manomet Village Steering Committee is in the town?
I mean, I would have to say that my concept of it's a billboard where people can come and express whatever concerns they have. It's also a place where the committee itself is there to sort of brainstorm and come up with a plan on how to make, a greater, how to implement a greater master plan. I mean, I think that's where it all started, and so there's a sense of legacy and history there, and so it's basically to continue that progress, and so it's presenting proposals to the planning board or to the select board, and that I won't know until I actually sit there because I actually haven't, participated, but that's how I envision it.
Very good. I think Ms. Baker will keep you well informed as to what the committee's role and your role is. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I look forward to seeing you at the next Manomet Village Steering Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, have you attended any of the steering committee meetings up till now?
I have not, but I do talk to those who serve on the committee, and we have conversations. But honestly, it's I'm involved with other things. So, like I said before, I have the opportunity to give a little bit more time back to the town. So, I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm coming from right now, And like everything else, I mean, there's always going to be a revolving door in these committees. So I can be on it for a year, maybe 2 years, or unlike Randy Parker, I don't know how long I can last. I don't think I could take his title, but it's hard to say. It depends on what happens in your own personal life as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much. If there are no further questions, members of the board, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to appoint Anthony Mayo to the Manomet Village Steering Committee.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Grandy. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Mr. Bennett. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Mr. Mayo, congratulations. Thank you very much for volunteering for your service. We appreciate it. Make sure you get sworn in by the town clerk, and we look forward to seeing you as part of the steering committee in the future.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Next on our agenda is, ironically, the Manomet Village Steering Committee. So they're here to give us one of their regular reports. Good evening, Ms.
Can you
Baker.
hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman and board members. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight to speak. My name is Alice Baker. I'm the chairman of the Manomet Village Steering Committee. On our committee, we have Jeanette Kelly. She's the vice chair. Roberta Capella, she's the clerk. Members also Bill Arienti, Cynthia Gross, and Laura Jean Enos, and the newly appointed Anthony Mayo. Did I? Okay, because I don't have that on my sheet here. I've been on the steering committee for 12 years. I keep saying I'm not going to renew, but I do because there's so much to do. I love this committee. I really do. And I have to honestly say that we've had members that's come and go over the years, and I have always had a full 7-member committee, and they have been the best members you could ever work with. And it takes a good team to get things done. And that's where I was lucky to have, members like that appointed from this board to the Manomet Steering Committee. So, I was proud of every one of them, and we worked great. I want to go over some of the accomplishments that we've done over through this master plan. We do read it, and I tell the members every so often, you need to read that master plan. Let's see what we can implement. And of course, a lot of times we'll get either emails, a letter, a resident that will show up at the meeting, and they will bring their concerns and needs, and that's when we step in and try to help them. Maybe we have to reach out to a board member, whether it's, the planning board, and a lot of times I'll reach out to you, Steve, for advice, thank you, and the Board of Selectmen. It all depends on what the issue is. So I want to go over some of the accomplishments that we've had over the years. So the town has established a library branch, Manamet, off State Road. The historic structure known as the Sims House has been acquired and its surrounding acres developed as Manamet Commons. And the Sim House has been restored, but the challenge ahead for the Sim House is to support itself financially, but unfortunately it has been unsuccessful financially, as we all know right now. But the thing is, people love the historic, and that's one of the main things we'd like to see in Manamet, in the town of Plymouth, is historic facilities, buildings, no matter what it is, we'd like to see that stay. The Taylor Ave reconstruction project. Taylor Ave has been an issue for years, trying to get that Taylor Ave reconstruction project going on for many, many years. Finally, they received the funding through MassDOT through the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, which is TIP. The reconstruction of a new bridge, sidewalks, parking spots, and new catch basins. And unfortunately, right now, we are still having a problem with drainage on Taylor Ave is still an issue. The reconstruction was finished at the end of 2021. And just so that I clarify that we speak a lot about the flooding on Taylor Ave, and if you don't live there, then you're really not familiar with what's going on, because it's very damaging to some properties, private properties, and other things. We have met with DPW about this, and we went over certain things that may be the issue that, relates to why this flooding is going on. And then again, tomorrow, Friday, I will be meeting with Bill Coyle, DPW Director, and also James Downey, the Assistant, again about the flooding out on Taylor Ave. And the reason now is because we'll be coming into the winter months, and we want to make sure that we can take care of the problem with the catch basins, and especially the outflow pipe. That's where one of our biggest concerns is, because that outflow pipe down towards the Manamet, going in the direction where the public entrance is down there, there's, that's a damaged pipe, and that contributes big time to, the flooding problems that we have. So that's one thing that we have to stay on top of. The restroom facility was intended to be built at 54 Taylor Ave lot, unfortunately was delayed due to expired permits, cost of materials. FEMA stepped in and called it a flood zone. COVID came in, and unfortunately we did not get the facility built, even though it's in the master plan. But what we did get, which is really great, is the mobile comfort station that sits over on the White Horse Beach side of the public entrance. And the good thing about that is that the town can remove that at the end of the season and use it somewhere else in the town if it's needed. 54 Taylor Ave now, the lot is used for public safety. The police will park in there. They'll use it for staging if they have to do any construction or anything, then the town can put their vehicles in there. The lifeguards will store their equipment. And then a couple of years ago, we put in to have bicycle racks put up at 54 Taylor Ave, and it works out just great. We did have some new LED lighting in some of the areas in the district. New addition to the fire station, number 5 on State Road. The chief has, come before the committee talking about the remodeling and the addition and everything like that. And so that's gone through, which is great. Anything for police and the fire that we need to, make sure that we get that for public safety. Pavement of some of the streets. The Manamet pressure zone is, right now, it's under the way. The boat ramp at the Point Road was upgraded a while back, but now it has issues with boats getting down the ramp. I guess maybe there's something going on there, that some of the boats are getting caught there. So that I have already spoken to James Downey about, and they're going to look into that. St. Catherine's Chapel Park was created through benevolent efforts of a local residents and gifted to the Sims House Foundation, which encourages the public and their pets to enjoy. The establishment of the White Horse Beach Parking Committee since 2013 now has a new program for the White Horse Beach District, residents creating a new sticker program, and that works wonderful. I was on the parking committee at the time that we got the approval from the select board for the sticker program, and I can tell you, I've lived on Taylor Ave 50 years. I've owned that property 50 years, and I've seen the improvement. I mean, what it's like to have this sticker program that the parking committee got through. It's fantastic, and it just does a lot for Plymouth, does a lot for Manomet. Environmentally, our new signage has been installed at the dunes, public entrance to the beach, public beach, and other areas as needed. Director David Gould has been amazing. If I email or call David Gould that the Manomet Committee has concerns, or residents have concerns about certain signs, especially signs that were removed during the reconstruction project, he has had no problem, gone out, replaced them, and signs where they've been needed, that is, in his field, he's been wonderful. He's been taking care of that. He does an amazing job. To support existing businesses and new businesses, we have Dunkin' Donuts. We have the new Leiden Street Coffee, Clement's Market, the Dollar Store, Kikadi's, Locally Yours, 42 Degrees, Gerard's Turkey Farm, and of course, historic and cultural preservation with the Sims House. July 3rd event still goes on, and I have to say that the Plymouth Police Department does a fantastic job. Every year it's just better and better and better, and they do an amazing job. And so the fire department does too. And the Priscilla Beach Theater, everybody enjoys that. That's another historical place. Local development, all I'm going to say is that special permits that come through the planning, actually we have one coming up this month on 693 State Road. We work with that, but we also work with the residents that come that have issues, and we take those on, on a basis of how they have their concerns. I do have to say a few things about what needs attention. Again, I explained the flooding issues, and we'll be dealing with that. I'll be meeting with the director tomorrow. Lack of street sweeping is part of the issue that Taylor Ave should have, especially when we have storms, because that sand comes up off the beach, and that's what goes into these catch basins and fills it up. And we really don't have, street sweeping down there, and that's an issue. That's problematic for these catch basins that cause a lot of this flooding. Speed is, right now, we have a huge problem with speed. We've had a meeting with the police department and DPW, especially in the White Horse Road area. When they come up White Horse Road, it's 30 miles an hour, and as soon as you get to, I think, the post office or the general store, I believe, when you turn it's 20, and then as soon as you turn that corner there where the Full Sail is, it goes back into 30. I can't tell you how bad the speeding is. It's insane. And I can't tell you how bad it is when commercial trucks come flying down Taylor Ave at 40, 50 miles an hour, and when they see that speed hump at the public entrance, they'll slam their brakes. And if the police officers are sitting at 54 Taylor Ave, it's hard for them. They can't see that. By the time it goes by 54 Taylor Ave, they're going slow. Speed is a real issue, and we're going to still push for on this speed problem, because it's going to take somebody to get killed before something is amended. And back in 1973, the DPW and the Board of Selectmen amended, they did an amendment on a change on the speed, and I don't understand why it cannot be done again. So that's something that I'd like to, the Minimum Steering Committee would continue to look into. And hopefully when the full seal is demolished and a new development is made there, some changes will be made to the loading and unloading, because that's where some of the problems come in with car incidents. We've had one home that's got hit 25 times, and that's just one home. And again, it falls back to the speeding and the arrogance of people that just don't want to pay attention to signs. And DPW did put a sign up there, but we have to find a solution to take care of this. And the other concern we have that we are working with is the fence down at the public entrance going towards Minimum Point Road is rusted so bad that parts of it is broken. So if anybody turns the corner to go into the public entrance, they may get cut or hurt. So I did bring that up to David Gu had sent me some information on that, which I will be forwarding. So we'll be working on that issue. And the last thing I want to say is that 10 years ago, no, 2 years right after I get on the steering committee, right before they started the Taylor Ave reconstruction, if you remember the island or down on Minimum Point Road, Taylor Ave, it was so bad vehicles could not see over green goose or whatever it's going to be. So we got permission. I have still have the letter in writing from the town that the Minimum Steering Committee could take care of that and get donations, not money, donations of plantings that we could beautify that area to make it look nice as a gateway. And I've done that for 10 years, every single holiday, even with the new reconstructions. We put barrels up there and did beautiful plantings on every holiday. Unfortunately, after Dutchess donated their plants this past October, somebody was throwing their trash and their dog waste into these barrels. And I made it very clear, I put it out there, whoever is doing this is going to hurt it for the community. Because I volunteer. I don't get paid for this. And they don't get paid for this. But we donated our time to get local businesses to donate beautiful plants and every single holiday to put them in there. And then you have somebody come along and do something so disgusting like that. I stopped. So now it looks terrible. So my intentions is I'm going to ask Bill Coyle if he'll take the barrels out of there. If people want to be cruel like that, then unfortunately we have to do that. And that's sad because I did that for 10 years. We planted them, watered them, didn't brag about them, did nothing, but the people loved them. And one person took that away from the community. So with that being said, I think I covered, the only other thing is I will be happy to see a new master plan because I think this one's worn out. And there are things that we still have to do that are not on there, and there are probably things on there that we just can't do. So I think I'm going to give credit to the steering committee. It's a team, it's not me, and they've done a wonderful job, and we've done everything that we could do so far, but we're going to continue to do it. So if you have any questions, I'm sorry I was long-winded, but this took over 12 years to get this up here. So
I want to start by just thanking you for all of your years of service. You are a shining example of what the steering committees can do, what they mean to the community. So I want to start because I know everybody else will do the same, so I want to jump in first. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the members of the committee, past and present, because you've been an active part of our community, and I think it's wonderful. We are instituting this that we want to hear more regularly from you and from the other steering committees, so it's not telling us what happened 12 years ago, but what happened 12 months ago. We need to keep up to date with you, and you need to be able to come to us and tell us when you have issues. So it is important for you to tell us about some of these problems and to obviously let us know if there's anything that we as a committee, we as a board can do to help the Village of Manomet when they have these issues. And you're right, Full Sail is going to create some new ones. There'll be some new challenges there, and we're looking forward as a board to being involved with the community and making sure that the right things happen. With respect to your village master plan, I think you've done a great job trying to meet the needs that you set forth there. I hope that, again, you'll add your voice to the many when it comes to the townwide master plan, so that Manomet's needs are part of that as well. With that, I'm going to open it up to the board. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So
Thank you, Steve.
I'm pretty familiar with the Manomet Steering Committee, and I think it's encouraging. I think maybe it's a testament to your leadership and your level of energy and the amount of hard work you do to put together the meetings and put together the agendas and do all the work and keep in contact with all the members, as well as apparently your recruiting, and I believe also encouraging members to seek higher office as well. 2 examples of which are in this room. So I really appreciate what you do. And as Mr. Bulletin kind of really put it so well, that you are a shining example of the leadership and the commitment and the willingness to give back to your community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Grandy?
I can only mirror the comments of the chair and Mr. Bennett, who is involved with the Manomet Village Steering Committee, as I was when your master plan was written with the members of the Manomet Steering Committee back 10 years ago. Seems like just yesterday. I really appreciate everything that the Manomet Steering Committee does, and you as the chair. You guys do a fantastic job. And we can't know what's happening everywhere throughout the town if we don't hear from an organized, fantastic steering committee. You advocate for your village center through what you're supposed to be doing and following the master plan as a guideline, the village center master plan, which we are now updating the town's master plan. So I, for one, appreciate everything that you do as a steering committee, and I was on the Cedarville Steering Committee for quite a few years. So I understand the work that you do, and I appreciate all the volunteering that you do and all the time that you spend. And it's unfortunate to hear that you did something for 10 years and one person destroyed that. I would hope that somehow, in some way, that would be able to continue. But I, for one, won't be able to do that. So I appreciate everything that the steering committee's done, and I thank you very much
Thank you.
for your report here this evening and the members that are here present with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Donaldson?
As a Manomet resident, I also want to thank you very much for all you've done prior to me moving here to Plymouth. I love the village that I live in, and I think that's coming from the hard work that you've done over the years. I have a couple questions for you.
Oh, boy.
Hopefully not as many.
Not as many as the ones before, but just 1 or 2 questions. So I know Manomet is a little unique that we also have HOA, homeowner association, beaches along in Manomet. Is there any collaboration with any of those HOA entities or anything like that?
When we get information that needs to go out, I'll use an example like the July 3rd events. The Manomet Steering Committee for years and still continues to meet with the police department and the fire department over the July 3rd events. And what we do at the Manomet Steering Committee level is whatever information they have on the procedure for that event, we send it out to whatever associations are there among the residents so they know what's going on. And we'll even put it on social media. So that's what we do. So anything like that that needs to go out to them, we do that.
Okay. And you have are any of the presidents of these associations any collaboration at some of the meetings or with some of the issues that represent Manomet as well?
We do get one that faithfully will tune in every now and then. The others, I will just send them the email, and it's whatever they respond. We did have one homeowners association down there, which it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, because that entailed a lot of residents who lived out there on Whitehorse. But we still get the message out.
Okay, and just one last question in regards to like beach and environmental issues. What are some of the things that I know that you're finding some of the things that are issues along Taylor Ave and within Whitehorse, but throughout the village, is there anything that's been coming to your attention or that you?
No, the only thing that's it's pretty good down there. It really has. Like I say, you know, David Gu does a fantastic job. You can't ask him to do any more than what he does. But for an example, every once in a while we will get somebody. They do light bonfires down there. They're still lighting some of those. But sometimes you'll get them that'll do a campfire. Like last week, somebody was burning. It looked like furniture or something going on. And that's when one of the members on our committee reached out to the fire department and the police department, and they went down and took care of it. And I did ask David Gould about maybe we could put a couple of signs down there. Not that I don't know if they'll work or not.
Right.
Maybe we could put a couple of signs down there about the violation of campfires, because it is in the bylaws. And I sent a copy of the bylaw, and he said he's willing to see what he can do and put up a couple of signs. But he said the same thing. You know, the only thing we can do once the sign is up, you can ask for enforcement. I'm a big advocate for signs. I always was. I always said if you don't have a sign, you don't have enforcement. So the best thing to do if you got an ongoing issue, if you can get a sign that's going to fix the problem or get enforcement, that's how you have to move forward, and that's what we do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you're doing and the whole committee is doing. And thank you for coming and giving your presentation to us. Thank you.
And through the chair, may I just say one more thing before I leave? I just want to say thank you. I think it's great having the liaison at the committee. And, you know, like I say, I know Tim, he knows how we work, and he'll be able to bring back a lot of this information to the planning board as well. But I think one of the things that we have now is a liaison from the Plymouth Police Department. I think the committee that the chief has put together is amazing, because it takes the burden off all these telephone calls going into the police department that are not emergency. And yet because our last meeting last month with Sergeant Ferguson and Liaison Paul, I can't pronounce his last name, Vice-Ferrer, and it's great because we can bring up the public safety issues with them, and then they help guide us along with that. So I just want to say that's a big plus to the steering committees, all of the steering committees for the police liaison. So thank you.
Thank you very much again. Thank you for everything your committee does, and we look forward to hearing from you
Okay,
again.
Thank you.
Moving to the next item on our agenda, we have ZBA 4131, 20 Sunset Avenue, Darrell Vidal. This is a special permit request required per section 203-9C to expand a pre-existing non-conforming structure to construct a front porch and addition, and the planning board is advisory to the Zoning Board of Appeals on this. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Robert DeWar here with Bracken Engineering on behalf of the applicant Darrell Vidal. And we are here to hopefully get your endorsement for our application for a special permit. I'm a little low tech, so if you guys actually don't mind, I know Lee's going to bring this plan up on the screen, but I have a hard copy. If you don't mind, I can bring it up.
Please, go right ahead.
So we have a lot here. We're on the western shores of Fresh Pond. and we are on the sort of the backside of the properties, but the lot is undersized. It's about 5,300 square feet. The minimum size in this R25 zone is 25,000. I think the lot was created, according to our research, 1950, 1951, in that neighborhood. So we are pre-existing non-conforming. The house right now is about 600 square feet, a little over, and the applicants are proposing to raise a portion of that and reconstruct an addition in the same area, bumping it out about 2 feet. That would be on the south side of the lot right there. And then on the front, in the green box, there's an existing deck that is in place now and within the front yard setback, but it's less than 30 or 3 feet in height, and according to the bylaws, it's not a structure. So it did not have to adhere to the front yard setback. The applicants are now proposing to put a roof over this porch, which would now convert it to a structure, which would theoretically have to abide by the front yard setback. So as a result, our special permit here is in order to get a 4-foot reduction in the required front yard setback. So, you know, we don't feel that this is any more detrimental to the neighborhood. The house is still quite small. We're increasing square footage of the structure only by about 31 square feet, and there's no increase to building height or anything, no increased usage of utilities. It's still serviced by a Title V compliant septic system. It's serviced by town water, and it has its own individual propane tank. So with that, I think I'd open up to the board for any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. First, back to staff.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, so in this review of the project, I just want to note that we did reach out to Bracken Engineering for some additional information to clarify what the lot coverage was, and they were very responsive. I believe we got their response within the day. I won't summarize everything that Mr. Dewar has already said for you, but in our review of the project, as was mentioned, they're looking for a waiver of the front yard setback from 20 feet to 16 feet. Other than the pre-existing non-conforming size of the lot, the other dimensional regulations are within keeping what would be required in the R25 zone. That includes the side yard and the lot coverage requirements. So as we have heard from the engineering department, fire department, and public health, stating that they have no comments nor objections, we are recommending that the planning board recommend to the zoning board of appeals that the special permit be granted, given that the addition and porch that are proposed are appropriate use within this residential zone. There are no hazards to pedestrians or vehicles as a result of this addition, and we don't anticipate a nuisance or adverse effect upon the neighborhood. We do, in the draft decision that we've drafted for you, as with all of your decisions, have the condition that prior to issuance of a zoning permit, a municipal lien certificate shall be provided to the building commissioner as evidence of payment for any back taxes, fees, or penalties owed to the town, if any. And that concludes my report for you.
Thank you, Ms. Lind. For bringing it to the board, why don't I see if there's public interest? Is there anybody here in the audience who wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing no one, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on this matter?
I'm not seeing anyone looking to be recognized.
Very good. I will bring this back to the board. Start with Mr. Grandy.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Donaldson?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Bennett?
I do have one question for you. Do you have any neighbors who are interested in the project, either in a positive or negative aspect?
We have not. No, we have not received any response, one way or the other.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So I note, both from the plans and from having gone out to the site, that this is a street that really you're essentially a corner lot if it's that it's
Yeah, it's
sort
a
of a wraparound.
It's kind of strange. Both streets are considered, Sunset Ave, but it does wrap the corner. So, yeah, it is.
So all of the construction, all the proposed, is actually moving toward the street rather than towards any of the other, the two other sides where there are residences. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
That, just wanted to verify. Thank you. Anything further from the members of the board? Seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to recommend approval.
I have a motion from Mr. Bennett. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Grandy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good luck at the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have site plan review for ADM for Use Area 15, Senior Affordable Housing.
Thank you. Evan, can you give a copy to staff as well? Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and staff. I'm Dan Gorska with ADM Agawam Development. I'm here this evening with the Grantham Group and other team members. We're excited to present the Use Area 15 site plan review for Cranberry Commons. Before diving into the project details, let's briefly cover the town's ideas on master planning and affordable housing. The following slides represent key elements in the past and current master planning efforts and affordable housing initiatives in the town of Plymouth, and we wanted to read a few that strongly pertain to this project. Creating a sense of community, create and build upon a village centers, improving quality of life, guide growth in areas with existing services. From the affordable housing documents, utilize zoning, regulation, and incentives to facilitate private sector production on affordable housing. Integrate new affordable housing into existing communities. Support the production of affordable housing, which is contextual in design and which is a quality of construction compatible with the market rate units. And create affordable housing for Plymouth that the town does not have to maintain or own or manage. This slide here highlights a couple roles of two town departments and their affiliates in advancing affordable housing. The missions are critical in shaping our community's commitment to providing affordable housing for all. The Plymouth Housing Authority's mission, to read the bold section, to operate, maintain, promote, and provide quality, affordable, and safe housing to eligible persons in the community with a demonstrated need. And for the Center for Active Living mission, to provide our community with a safe, trusted, physical, and virtual environment where information and access to programs and services foster a healthy and vital lifestyle throughout the aging process. As we move forward with the presentation, please keep these slides in mind as Cranberry Commons meets and exceeds all of them. To provide a larger context of the area that we're talking about tonight, this is an illustrative master plan of the Red Brook area. The area that's circled in yellow and called out, this is Use Area 15. It's located on the northeast corner of River Run Way and Wareham Road. Tonight, we're here to confirm that our plan and supporting documents follow the master plan special permit for Red Brook and meet the requirements of the master plan special permit, design guidelines, and Trevor bylaw. Here are a few highlights about the project's location. Convenience. Cranberry Commons is ideally positioned in the northeast corner of River Run Way and Wareham Road, right next to the lively Red Brook Village Center. Residents will enjoy proximity to the Meeting House, a variety of restaurants, medical and physical therapy office, the YMCA, community garden, and the welcoming Village Green. The development features a single, well-designed building with 62 units. It includes 2 inviting common areas for residents to relax and socialize. The site offers pedestrian-friendly access with sidewalks along Wareham Road and River Run Way. The thoughtful design includes walkways within the site to get to and from the building and the main roads and the main sidewalks, appropriate lighting, and landscaping that blends seamlessly with the surroundings. The building is set back from the street, providing a pleasant transition between the new structure and the existing red brick apartments and the adjacent woodland area. As many of you know, this project has been evolving over time. In the past year, ADM and the Grantham Group, a Massachusetts developer in affordable senior housing, have worked together to provide 62 deeply affordable units at Red Brick, targeting those with incomes at or below, a majority at or below 60% AMI, and some as low as 30% AMI. As part of the collaborative effort, ADM plans to donate the necessary land to the Grantham Group and support the project by completing preliminary site work. With this level of partnership, Cranberry Commons will be able to increase the number of affordable units from its initially proposed 52 to 62 units. On February 28th in 2024, we presented an update to 3 out of the 4 members that are here tonight, which voted in favor to recommend to town meeting. And on April 8th of 2024, the Plymouth Town Meeting overwhelmingly approved $4 million from the Community Preservation Funds for this project. With these key steps completed, we are now seeking approval for Use Area 15 to move forward with this important initiative. This slide shows some of the key project components as it relates to longer-term affordability. As noted, there's 62 units of affordability, all one-bedroom units. They're delivering 62 deed-restricted one-bedroom units specifically for seniors 62 plus, ensuring dedicated and high-quality housing for our senior community. 70% local preference. As requested by the Select Board, it will establish a 70% initial local preference, prioritizing local needs and fostering community support. All units are affordable in perpetuity, 100% of them, all 62, contributing fully to the town of Plymouth's subsidized housing inventory and demonstrating a commitment to long-term affordability. These are targeted for low-income seniors. We are focused on providing these units, ensuring that our most vulnerable community members receive the support they need. The breakdown of affordability is as follows. There are 19 units at or below 80% AMI, 30 units at or below 60% AMI, and 13 units at or below 30% AMI. Yes, sorry about that. What you see here on the right-hand side is an illustrative version of the site plan. Over the months, the project has evolved through insightful discussions with community members, elected officials, and some other town officials. This is an ongoing collaboration, highlights the shared effort and collective input that have been key to shaping the progress. Throughout collaborative process, we successfully relocated the project within Red Brook to address and resolve some neighbor concerns, demonstrating our commitment to community feedback. We then worked together to flip the building on the site plan, further enhancing our responsiveness to the needs of concerned neighbors. Our partnership led to the addition of parking spaces, slightly above a 1-to-1 ratio, providing a total of 65 parking spaces for these 62 units. This does not include the on-street parking that's also proposed, with the flexibility to expand more if needed. We agreed to retain the tree buffer at the corner of River Run Way and Wareham Road, reflecting our shared dedication to maintaining the area's beauty and integrity. This is a picture of the same plan. I just want to highlight a few other key site elements. One thing that is slightly different than from what was presented to you guys beforehand was after preliminary discussions with the fire department, they did request a secondary means of access. This access is proposed off of River Run Way, and this will be provided for emergencies. This will include a small paved apron section that will then transition into a gravel road. From a stormwater perspective, all the rainwater will be directed into a series of deep sump hooded catch basins, treated in those deep sumps and hoods, then a water quality unit, and then will flow into a natural lying depression to reduce land disturbance and to promote infiltration. The sewage will travel through gravity sewer lines to connect to an existing line, eventually reaching a private wastewater facility. Also, water, the domestic and fire surface will connect to an existing private water main in Wareham Road. Again, the water is provided also by a private water company and not the town. Electrical and telecommunications will also be serviced off of Wareham Road and River Run Way. It's important to note that all those utilities are already exist and present. From trash and recycling, there is a dedicated trash and recycling area, which is in this location at the end of the parking lot, which will also be complete with a privacy fence. As many of you know, Red Brook is committed to conservation. This slide shows our progress. We have conserved over 1,760 acres and plan to protect another 375 acres this fall. Our dedication to preserving land while building a vibrant community is unwavering. In line with the Section 205-72K of the Trevor bylaw, and consistent with previous approvals for the YMCA and the Red Brook Apartments, the project is requesting waivers from certain provisions of Section 205-72. We're asking for a waiver from building criteria A for the village mixed use area, seeking an adjustment to allow for an increase of overall gross density between 6 and 10 dwelling units per acre, up to 15 dwelling units per acre, as permissible by the planning board in the bylaw. We're also requesting a waiver. I'm sorry, I referenced the incorrect section on waiver 1. It's correct on the slide, but I said it wrong. My apologies. The second waiver is from building standard A. We request an allowance for more than 30% limit on the total square footage on the second floor of the building. We're requesting a waiver from building standard B, requesting an increase in the maximum allowable square footage exceeding 20,000 square feet. And lastly, we're requesting an increase in the maximum building height from 35 feet to about a little under 50 feet for specific architectural features, and that's based on the way the measurable from the zoning code and how the building height is interpreted. I just want to point out and highlight that during the Use Area 1 site plan approval process and through the Red Brook Apartment approval process, waivers 2 and 3 were granted, and initially during that Use Area 1 process, waivers 2 and 3, that approved language for these waivers was then incorporated into our community design guidelines, which was also approved by this board as part of Use Area 1. With that, I would like to turn the presentation over to Clay Smoot, the project architect. Scroll them out, yeah. Yep. Down.
Good evening. My name is Clay Smook from Smook Architecture in Westboro. I've been working with the Grantham Group for over 20 years, working on senior housing projects as well as assisted living projects. I've also done quite a bit of work in Plymouth at the Pine Hills. I've been working at the Pine Hills, done projects at the Pine Hills since '97. Many of the commercial buildings, the post office, the Stonebridge Club, Avalon Phase 1, and many individual homes there. So I have a pretty good understanding of what we call New England vernacular architecture. So this project, and that's the front elevation. I'm going to be showing some images. Many of them you've already seen. I'm just going to take you through it. I think it's important. This prototype of this building, we did a similar building for them, the Grantham Group. Gosh, it was in 2005 already. It was in Marlborough, Massachusetts, on an old brownfield site. It's a real success story. The town, the city of Marlborough cleaned up the site, conveyed the property to the Grantham Group, and we built this. In this case, this is very similar architecture that we're talking about doing here. In this case, this is actually an assisted living complex. But the lessons learned on this project, I was brought in by the Grantham Group. They had done several other buildings prior to this, and they really wanted to develop an architecture that they felt was in keeping with traditional New England vernacular architecture. So here is the look of the project. The project we're proposing is very similar to this. The use of the same color palette of varying shades of gray, of a shingled base, a very strong clapboard sort of midsection, and then crowned by a cornice line. The base building is sort of a set of 3 stories of about 35 feet to the top of the flat roof. And then we've added some architectural embellishments that just create a real sense of sort of the old the grand hotels this was actually modeled on originally. So as we move more specific to this project, and all of these images, you know, we've seen them before. I just want to highlight some features of this. Of course, this is looking across Wareham Road and River Run. All of the Grantham Group projects, typically they're either L or U-shaped buildings. In this case, as he said, it's a 62-unit, 3-story building. Up to the flat roof is 1 to 2 inches above 35 feet is the entire mass of the building. And then, as you see, we've sort of applied these hats on the corners and on the entries. I think it's really also an important part of the massing. And even as we use this sort of kit of parts in all of the different projects, they do vary from project to project. And on this one, I would just want to point out that on the corner of Wareham Road and Sunflower, we're actually dropping the massing of the building down substantially. You can see on that corner there. So as we're moving more towards the area where the townhouses are, the building actually drops down. Another view of the same rendering, this was a computer rendering. Here we have that corner that I'm talking about, the corner of Sunflower and Wareham. You can see that drops from 3 stories down to 2 stories. And the original design actually had 3 stories, but we felt that gesturing and dropping the massing down as we move towards both towards the corner of the site as well as towards the townhomes, we thought that was just the right thing to do. Next slide. And I'm more than happy to go over these after. I'm just trying to be brief. A view across River Run and Wareham towards the entry. You can see just to the left of the flag, there's sort of the entry pediment, and there's a tower next to that. And again, the color palette is that first color palette from the photos, which is neutral grays and warm tones. Whoops. Finally, whoops. Sorry about that, folks. This is moving a little bit more into that. You can see we're even bringing a little detail to the roof. On the asphalt shingles, we're creating some striping there, sort of reminiscent of New England buildings that you've seen before. And again, there's a very, very strong cornice line on this building. And then finally, I believe this is the final view, a little bit more detail, the entry. There's a lot of attention to the landscape of this project. So much of what creates a real sense of home is what happens between the curb and the street and the store and the facade of the building. So part of the program is to really have a robust landscape plan. And with that, I will turn it over to Walter Ohanian. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Board, for allowing me to speak today. Hello, everyone. My name is Walter Ohanian, and I am the Managing Director of the Grantham Group. I appreciate you allowing me to discuss Cranberry Commons, the 62-unit affordable housing community for seniors. Grantham Group is a Massachusetts-based developer, and we are management agent to a number of affordable housing communities in Massachusetts. We have properties as far west as Northampton and Belchertown, Mass., and in central Mass with locations in Webster, Worcester, and Marlborough, Massachusetts, and in southeastern Mass with communities in Attleboro and our newest affordable housing community for seniors in Situate. We have developed and currently manage over 500 units in Massachusetts, all of which qualify to the state's 40B housing inventory. Being a Mass-based company with over 25 years' experience in this arena, we've gained strong relationships with various cities, towns, and governmental agencies. During the Baker administration, we were recognized by the governor for our work in affordable housing. There we go. As you may recall, at the Springtown meeting, the project was approved for $4 million of CPA funds towards this great project. The other funding sources include an in-kind contribution by AD Makepeace for the land, making the land pad ready, and allowing the site to tie into existing utilities. In addition, the lion's share of the funding actually comes from the state in the form of an award of both federal and state tax credits, home funds, and other state subsidies funding sources. In addition, the project will also take on conventional debt. The total project cost is just about $30 million. The development is income restricted to persons at or below 30, 60, and 80% of the area median income and will be located within Red Brook. Leading up to town meeting, we held a variety of meetings, including a community-wide virtual meeting for Red Brook residents, 2 private meetings with specific Red Brook residents, a variety of public meetings, including CPC, here at Planning Board, Select Board, and Advisory and Finance. And we also held an in-person Red Brook community meeting at South High School. During these meetings, we listened and made changes to the project, which included relocating the building so it's adjacent to the existing Red Brook apartments, which mimic the size and scale of the proposed building. Additional parking was added, and so was the unit count was increased as well. Besides having 62 one-bedroom units, we'll also have common areas for the residents to congregate. These include a living room with a gas fireplace, a multi-purpose room for residents to use for doing puzzles, enjoying a group meal, or coordinating a bingo game. The building will be built to the energy stretch code and will be served by an elevator to get from floor to floor. Having these common spaces will help residents facilitate socialization and be part of their own community within within Cranberry Commons. The tremendous benefit that the project location has is its access to the nearby Red Brook Village Center. It's a short, flat walk area to community gardens, the bakery, the restaurant, YMCA, physical therapy, doctor's offices by Beth Israel. The 62 one-bedroom apartments will be approximately 690 square feet and will include everything a resident will need to live independently in the unit. It will have a stove, dishwasher, refrigerator, in-unit washer and dryers. And the units are designed with the understanding of the residents who will be living in this unit. They will have easy step-in showers, ample-sized doorways, and walk-in closets. The apartments will have large windows, making the units bright and cheerful. You may wonder who are the residents who will move into this community. These are your neighbors, possibly people who have lived in Plymouth their entire life but can no longer afford to live in Plymouth for a variety of reasons. Possibly people who have had to give up their living arrangement long ago and might be living with their children in town. These may be your parents who are you're looking to bring closer so you can help with their needs during their golden years. But ultimately, these will be people who just don't have the financial resources to live in a community as beautiful as Plymouth and Red Brook without a reduced rent option. Thank you. As Dan had mentioned, it's a 62-unit senior housing community. There is a 70% local preference that will be done during initial lease-up, 100% affordability in perpetuity, and it'll be targeted to low-income seniors. And with that, myself and the team are here for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me bring this back to staff for their thoughts first.
Thank you. So this is a site plan review, and the process and the purpose for this is to ensure that what's being proposed is consistent with the special permit that was issued by the planning board, as well as the master plan that is approved as part of that special permit. I won't go into a lot of the review. You've seen this a few times already. It's been before town meeting. They've given a very thorough presentation. Just a couple things to point out, that they are looking for a waiver of height. The average height of the building, or majority of the building, is 35 feet. The height areas are really just for those architectural features, the turrets and the peaks that just add a little style instead of just having a flat roof. So again, the majority of this building is 35 feet or less. It's really just those architectural features that are added so that it's not simply a flat-roofed building. And as was pointed out, there are 52 affordable units that will count towards their affordable. The town asked them to voluntarily add 10 more, so it's 62 total. And unlike pretty much all the other projects we've ever seen, this is the first one that hopefully sets a tone in Plymouth for moving forward, that we want affordable units that are better than just 80% AMI, that they are lower and more affordable. That 80% AMI, which is average medium income, that is based on a Boston-Cambridge number. And I think the last I saw, that 80% was 120 or 140,000 for a family of 3. So again, that's not, it may be more affordable, but it's not truly affordable. So looking at these lower numbers really makes sense, and again, I hope this project sets the tone for the town for moving forward with that. And the only other thing I want to point out is that we do have a condition here to make clear with the building commissioner that prior to occupancy, all of the necessary deed restrictions, and again, this will be affordable in perpetuity, forever, and making sure that those restrictions are in place prior to occupancy of any of the units. And again, with that, I think this is consistent with what was presented and supported by town meeting, presented to this board, presented to the select board. So we're recommending that you find that their proposal is consistent with the master plan and the special permit, and I recommend that the building commissioner issue building permits to let this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. With the board's agreement, I'd like to open this up for public comment. The caveats tonight, just so people are clear, we are here to talk about this use area only, this particular aspect, this project only. I understand there are a lot of concerns at Red Brook, various issues and things that people want to discuss. As those come up, I assure people that we will have the opportunity to come before the planning board and speak about those when those issues arise. But right now, we are here just to talk about this particular project, the site plan review for use area 15. With that, I'll start by opening it up to people in the room, and I am going to ask that people hold to 3 minutes on public comment. Is there anyone here in the room who'd like to speak? Okay.
I did practice today. Hopefully this is only 3 minutes. Good evening. Thank you to the board for allowing me public comment. My name is Keith Growlin, 4 River Birch Way. First, I'd like to go back to the July 10th meeting briefly to thank the board for recognizing the fact that previous boards did not hold ADM to account for their commitment to achieving affordable housing numbers. But if you examine the minutes, which I got through FOIA from Connor, of all those meetings, you can see the board member makeup was always changing. There's 15 different members over the last 6 years that have been through your board. So thank you for letting the residents know that what occurred in the past will not occur going forward, and we appreciate that from the last meeting. I just have a couple questions and concerns that need to be addressed by ADM before this approval is given. Based on the approval letter that's in your packet, that is addressed from Mr. Hartman to Mr. Campbell, dated August 15, 2024, which is tomorrow. My questions are as follows. Finding number 12 on that document of this approval letter, project serviced by privately owned wastewater collection and treatment system. The residents' biggest concern is our wastewater company. I would like to know what is the dollar amount that will be paid by ADM to the wastewater company for sewer connections for those 62 units upon closing on this deal. From town meeting presentation, it looks like $500,000 will be sent for the total connection fees and infrastructure to connect to the plant. I just want to make sure that's a correct number. While these units will these units be provided garbage disposal for their sinks? Currently, residents are not allowed to have these, but 104 of our rental units do have them. So just confirming that this will not happen in the Grantham units. Finding number 9, new stormwater system. Who will be responsible for the cleaning and maintenance of those new catch basins? Finding number 14 on the approval letter. Current tabulation of base density and TDI units. Happy to see the footnote number 20 clarifies total number of units in use area 6, all phases, is now 241. Nice to see the tabulations of units in this packet of July 11 showing 1,074 units as a correction from the May 9 tally of 1,044. And finding number 18, my last comment, inclusionary housing. It's still a disappointment that ADM is still counting use areas 10, 11, and 12 for potential residential affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gravelin. Wanted to speak? Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, committee members, for this opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Mari Ryan. I live at 33 Mountain Laurel Way in the Red Brook community. Red Brook was built based on the zoning bylaws of the traditional rural village development. Those bylaws require that no building shall exceed 35 feet in height or be larger than 20,000 square feet. The proposed project will occupy a large portion of the village mixed-use area. It will actually dominate our village mixed-use area based on its size and location. The waivers that are being asked for by ADM for the increased density, square footage, and height are not in keeping with the intentions of the traditional rural village community. The town created these types of development bylaws to maintain the integrity of our New England community. That's what we as homeowners were buying when we purchased our community, our homes in this community. Owners at Red Brook are required to adhere to stringent covenants and restrictions when making any modifications to the exterior of our homes or our landscaping. These requirements are in place to preserve the aesthetic character of the neighborhood and our community. Why is ADM not having to be held to these same standards? I ask that you enforce the bylaws and maintain the integrity of our community. As a Red Brook property owner, I have concerns about the overall development of the mixed-use area in general. What happens on one side of the street impacts what happens on the other side of the street. The proposed 62 units add many vehicles and much more congestion in an already heavily congested area. We do not have, to my knowledge, have been provided with detailed information on the future development on the other side of the street, opposite the Grantham location, or on the opposite corner of River Run Way. Full disclosure of future plans is essential in the context of the current waiver requests. In previous discussions before this board, Red Brook residents expressed deep concerns about the forested area along River Run Way, specifically to keep that forested area to screen lighting and noise from existing neighborhoods. This doesn't mean clearing the area and then planting new trees that in my lifetime won't be tall enough to provide that kind of screening. What this means is to keep the existing forested area. I ask that you hold ADM accountable to their promise to keep that area forested and to keep it intact. Also, you see, as our previous presenter explained, that there's a deep commitment to the landscaping on this project. Putting 15-foot trees on a 40 or 50-foot building is not going to be a commitment that's going to provide the screening for this dominating building in our neighborhood. The residents of the Grantham project, so I have a question for the team, is the residents of the Grantham project will have the benefit of moving into an established community with a great many amenities. I'm curious as to how the Landowners Association will be compensated for those additional residents that will have access to all those amenities.
Joe, you all done? Sorry.
Yes, and that was my final statement.
Okay,
my question to have an answer to that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Good evening. John Retchless, 22 Cranberry Farm Road in Red Brook. As a resident, I just want to respond to the previous speaker in terms of the height of the building. We do have strict rules in Red Brook, but we also have variances. We can also get waivers, as I recently did for a fence I installed in my backyard. So, waivers exist, and I strongly support a waiver for the height of the building. I think if this building is built, and I really hope it does, I think our vulnerable seniors deserve it. Red Brook's a wonderful community, and they're going to love it. Having a building that looks like a regular apartment or a hospital is really, to me, not the thing to do. I think having architectural peaks and making an interesting looking building is a reasonable request. And as a Red Brook resident, I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start there, and then
Good evening. My name is Paul Branco. I live on 1 Sunflower Way. I moved to the city, from the city to here to enjoy myself, relax. I really do not want to look at a 50-foot roof. If we're really talking about another 15 feet, if you look at the top of the light here, that little ball, that's the extra 15 feet. Now, does that bring a question to me to ask you, Dan? That extra 15 feet, another year or so, is that going to be another floor added to that 15 feet? Because you've got 9 to 10 feet would be a
Sir, direct your comments to the board. The board will ask him. We don't do back and forth.
So
Thank
my
you.
question is, that extra 15 feet, at some point, will they bring a 4th floor to that area? So when I'm looking out my porch, I'm still going to look at 50 feet of roof, and the 15-foot trees are not going to block it. And also, the traffic is horrendous. I'm sure the people that work for AD Makepeace, at their office, they hear the dirt bikes all day and the cars racing up and down Wareham Road, where that exit is going to be coming out into that exact area, the intersection of Wareham Road, River Run, and you're within about 40 feet. So something to look into is the traffic also. I really don't want to say anything else because everyone else has said enough. Thank you much.
Thank you. Mr. Lydon.
Steve Lydon, Precinct 17. I have no problem. I don't live in Red Brook, so I want that to be known. I have no problem with going up the extra 15 feet to put the peaks. It beautifies the building. Like you said, it's not a flat roof. It beautifies the building. I think 15-foot trees, they're going to grow. And when you're coming down and you're walking, you're not going to be looking up, looking at the peaks. Traffic is everywhere. It's not just Red Brook and Wareham Road, and we heard stuff earlier about Beaver Dam Road. It's everywhere. So it's progress, I guess. I was down there 40 years ago. There was no traffic. And now we have the ponds, we have Deer Pond, and we have Red Brook. I moved there because I liked it. And these people, they liked it, and they should have every right to live there too. But, it's progress. And when you got a place that's beautiful and people want to move to, you're going to have traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is William White, 5 Sunflower Way. My question is, they've said that the average age is going to be 76, mostly widows. There's no way to really predict that. It could be a lot of couples. These couples may have more than one vehicle. They may even still be working. So now they expanded the original parking spots from, I think it was like 35 to 64, and they were allowing for expansion if it's needed. My question is, who makes that determination, if it's needed or if it's not needed? Would it be Grantham? Would it be abutters, homeowners association, or the town of Plymouth? And who would enforce that? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak? Please.
Hi. I just had a question about the fire exit that's cutting into River Run Way. My question would be for Dan or whatever, to how are you going to enforce people from not using that as a cut-through? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room who wishes to speak? Just please come on up.
Thank you for letting me speak. Darcy Moss, 32 Wisteria Road in Red Rock. I have a question for the board. I think it relates to this, but at the last hearing that we had, the number count of homes and what wasn't going to be considered affordable was going out to legal counsel for a decision. And I called a number of times, and I was wondering if you'd had a decision back on that. I think it's kind of relevant to this submission. So that's question number one. And then just a statement, I'm basically in favor of this. I was against it at the beginning. I think AG Peace made a very good effort at trying to accommodate the community in moving it. And I understand the height variance, but my understanding from the designs, I'm no architect, but that's not additional housing or anything. It's to make the building more appealing and more conducive to other structures in the area. And I'm in favor of that. I think I'd rather have an attractive looking larger building than an ugly smaller building. I think that just adds to the community. I'm totally in favor of affordable housing. I think it's an integral part of who we are as a community. But I also agree that wastewater and things like that, I like those I's dotted and the T's crossed, just so that we don't run into any problems on that. Also, just for the record, I moved in, I've been building and moved in 2 years ago, so I've been looking and stalking Red Brook for the last 3 or 4 years. So I knew that master plan better than, knew it like the back of my hand. And there are certain areas in that common center that have always been designated as being future commercial development. So I anticipated that. And it's part of the community development. I understand people are going to have varying opinions as to, when I saw that and it was commercial development, I thought it was going to be a cute little bookstore or something. That's generally not the case. So that all ties back in, though, to my initial question as far as I'm really very interested in what legal counsel has to say, so that everybody's on the same page with, how are we counting the affordables, how many homes, residences total, et cetera. But basically, I think it would be a good contribution to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room?
Mr. Chairman, Al Donato, Precinct 17 Chairman. I live at 46 Sunflower Way, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, I just want to remind everyone that the original location, I think we all agree that that was a bad location. And I've said to many people, if it was Mother Teresa building the Sistine Chapel, that it just didn't work at that location. And I look at this move as that commercial piece of land by right. There is a lot, and if you look at the zoning bylaws, there is a lot that could go there. So if it was not moved by right, they could do a lot there. And it's always a give and take. They have this sort of motif that we're living under, which kind of protects things. I think it benefits them as well. I know, we have our shortcomings. I don't believe anyone is exempt from oversight, but I think they're going to be there with us through this in the future. So I think it's a good project. I think it's reasonable. I think it's the least impact is senior housing. I don't know what other under that list of commercial. I mean, in theory, you could put a Starbucks, a McDonald's. They just didn't go that way. It didn't work for this village concept. So it's give and take, these special permits. And there's a greater purpose to that mixed use. In closing, I want to say, pre-World War II, we had this concept where our grandparents would go to the village and walk to those things. After World War II, at 128 in the malls, it was sort of the suburbia. Now the planners have decided to go back to this village concept. There are some days I may not drive for a few days. So although the traffic is bad, it could be a lot worse if we did not have this mixed-use concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room who wishes to speak? One last time. Okay. I'm going to open it up to people on Zoom. Mr. Hartman?
So we have somebody looking to be recognized. Kimberly iPad.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Couple of things. So first, I'm Kimberly Karras. I live at 9 Sunflower Way here in Red Brook. I just want the planning board to know that, at least with some of us, there's been no collaboration since the last planning board meeting. So that's just disingenuous on the part of ADM to make that statement. Review in a vacuum is what I think is happening here, and in the sense that how can any occupancy permit be issued without a plan for the remaining affordable housing to be in place? So what's the plan? This is in a vacuum for one piece of it, but under all the special permit and the MOUs, and this planning board has said that they're not going to make the mistakes of the past and ignore non-compliance. So where's the compliance for the remaining affordable housing and the location for that? Regarding the height restriction, 35 to 50 feet, as Mr. DiNardo said, there's give and take, and 35 feet versus 50. I think 50 is way too tall for the area and the space. We don't want another Pine Hills, with all due respect to the architect. Why can't it be 45? Why can't it be 42? So the architectural integrity doesn't need to be compromised. There can be a give and take. Maybe it's not 35, but does it have to be 50? So I would ask the planning board to consider that. With regard to parking, I think still it's inadequate right now on Sunflower Way. We have persons from the apartment parking in front of our homes. We have people from the garden, people from the restaurant area. Sunflower Way parking is awful for our guests and our family members. So I would ask that that be something that is entertained and better addressed by the planning board. With regard to the 3 parallel parking street spaces on Wareham Road, that's an accident waiting to happen. The kids are crossing over to the playground from the apartments, and having folks parallel park and back up and pull in is just, honestly, I think a really bad accident involving a child waiting to happen. Access to the building only through one egress area on Wareham Road. That, I think, too, is very problematic, especially where it is exactly opposite of the egress area to the back of the restaurant. I have concerns about water and wastewater. Are there assurances from ADM that the LOA / residents of Red Brook aren't going to be paying for the project to tie into the wastewater treatment? Taxpayers are already funding $4.5 million of this project through CPC and the Affordable Housing Trust money. So will there be other costs to the LOA, through the LOA to homeowners? And with regard to water, what is the rate for water usage? We're being pillaged compared to what Pine Hills has to pay. So what will that be? Will it be comparable to what residents are paying? Thank you very much for your attention and your service.
Thank you very much.
So we have Scott McMillan's hand up.
Mr. McMillan.
My name is Scott McMillan.
Please, go ahead.
Scott McMillan, I'm a Red Brook resident at 51 Wisteria Road. I just want to say that I agree with a number of the prior speakers that this is a good project, and I appreciate both the changes that have been made by ADM and also I want to say that I support variance, the height variance. I think to go, I mean, the 35 feet you need that for a 3-story building. You can't make that less. And I appreciate going up the additional 15 feet to add some architectural detail. My main reason for speaking, though, is I have 2 questions and 1 comment regarding some of the design details that were in the design package, if I might. Starting with finding number 6, it's stated that this is an all-electric unit, meaning the maximum energy codes. I assume that means no natural gas, and I assume that heating and hot water will both be through heat pumps. And I just want to confirm that it'll be heating and heat pump hot water. Another question, this is on sheet C 4.1. The southeastern half of the lot is shown as being undeveloped, with the exception of a cut that'll be made along the drainage easement. There was a comment that parking might be expanded out into this area, but I can't see that anywhere near the entire undeveloped part of this lot would be required for expanded parking. So my question is the plan, though, then for the undeveloped southeastern portion of this lot to remain wooded, natural woods without further development? And then my last thing is I wanted to comment on landscape plan L 1.1. It lists example species, but it doesn't require those species. I just want to be very clear that calorie pears are not included in any of that landscaping. They are invasive. They are banned in many states, yet they're planted throughout Red Brook still. And I just want to make sure that that's in the past and that they aren't planted further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pear. It's a pear, yes.
Kathy Bell.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening and for your work. I'm Kathy Bell. I live at 6 Southview Way. Prior to town meeting, I voiced concerns about the proposed site and footprint of this building and was reassured at the time that these concerns would be addressed as part of the permitting process. Accordingly, as a town meeting representative for Precinct 17, I voted yes for the 16C, understanding that this would happen, and this is what's happening currently. My feeling is this building should not exceed 35-foot height restriction. The height restriction's in place so that Red Brook retains its village feel, so the village green area and river runway is not dwarfed by this building, as was allowed in the Pine Hills, which the row one, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a very large building that unfortunately has dwarfed their village green, and I'm very concerned about the height. In fall of 2023, Safe Harbor Marina proposed a renovation. The plan aimed to build a larger, taller storage facility that would incorporate exterior boat storage racks. The Zoning Board of Appeals denied it, the request to exceed the area's 35-foot height limit by an additional 10 feet. If this is not allowed in the Plymouth downtown area, why would it be allowed in a very rural area such as Red Brook? And I looked at the Grantham building in Situate, their affordable housing. It's a flat roof, there's no hats, the design is attractive, it's only 2 stories high. I will not reiterate Ms. Ryan's comments, but I very much agree with her. The other thing I wanted to say was, one of the concerns was voiced last spring was that there'd be every effort made to screen this building by tall, dense plantings to decrease noise and light pollution, particularly important for the residents who have homes on Inkberry across the runway. I'd like to see the plans for that included in this proposal. I don't see that. I see plantings for the building itself, but for screening along River Runway, I didn't see anything added, and I agree. It's very important. It's not just people going down River Runway do not want to see a very large building. We don't necessarily have a hotel. We weren't thinking we'd have a hotel in Red Brook, and this would certainly look like it. So I'd like to see that screened as much as possible. And thank you very much for your time and your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on Zoom who wishes to speak? Last time, anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to bring it back to the board. I'd certainly ask that as we ask our questions, we'll also ask the residents' questions and hopefully get some responses from the various applicants' team. Let me start with Mr. Donaldson.
First of all, I want to commend the work that's been done so far. We've come back a few times with this. I have personally been down and saw the site. I'm really pleased that the group has gone in and took feedback from us and from the community, and they've come with these new proposals and changes. I don't really have any questions. I'm just gonna give a brief statement in regards to the main issues that's come up in regards to the height. I am okay with the height for the architectural reasons, and traffic is traffic. That was another issue that seems to be a headliner here. We have traffic in Manaman, we have traffic downtown. I think that is going to be an ongoing issue, and whatever I know I know that whatever is going to be put in place to try and eliminate some of that, they're going to do their best to do that. And again, I have the electric part with the heat pumps. I think that's a valid, good question. Electricity, we know, is not very inexpensive. So just kind of like maybe an idea of what would be the per unit electrical costs or electrical usage for these units, so that we're taking that in consideration in regards to having these individuals with a lower income in there. It'll be nice if they can afford the proposed rent, but not be able to afford the utilities. So I think that's a good, valid question. And I'm also in agreement with would like to know the question in regards to the parking. Who's going to determine whether or not it's needed or not needed? And I think that's all I have. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Grandy.
Okay, so this is the comment and question portion for myself. I have a couple of questions. In the design, do you have a public area outside for these residents? Somewhere on the outside of the building? Picnic area, courtyard, something along those lines? When we go to the access for the future access or emergency access for the fire department, I see it says a gate. Is that going to be controlled by a key and a chain, or is that going to be an access card for the fire department? So I'd like to know exactly how that's going to play out. And I think also, instead of it being a gravel road, I think maybe it should be grassy pavers. Grassy pavers in that access road versus just a gravel road. I think that would work a lot better and also support any emergency vehicles that might have to drive in through that access as far as the weight is concerned. So, moving on to augmenting the landscaping. I think maybe we should do a little more augmentation of the landscaping for the entire building as far as screening goes. Now, you can't plant a 30-foot tree. It won't survive. It can't be transported and planted. So when we talk about planting trees, I think we're talking about the caliper size of the trees that are being planted. I haven't gone through the landscape plan with a fine-tooth comb, but I would hope we would use the largest caliper tree that you can plant and have it survive and create the screening that the residents want to see as far as the screening is concerned. The parking determination, I think, is a big one when we talk about future parking. Is that determination going to be made by the planning board? Is that determination going to be made by planning staff? Who is going to make that determination if one day you come back and say you need this area and the reasons why you would actually need that area? We heard questions as far as tap fees were concerned for the residents that live in there. They want to ensure that, obviously, they don't incur any future costs for the building or any type of fees that are involved, and I understand that, and I'm sure that's not the case. When we talk about building the building, it's going to be built to today's energy code, which gets hotter and hotter every day. The values for residential homes right now is a score of 42 to meet their requirements for the energy rating of code. Windows, heat, insulation, all of those things come into play. Eventually, the state wants to see developers and buildings be built at zero net loss as far as energy is concerned. We have a long way to go on that, but the more you lower those net ratings as far as the energy is concerned, the higher the cost of building the building is. Therefore, that cost is passed on to the consumer and the developer in those processes, which obviously is something that is a supply and demand. We don't have any housing. This development is going to bring 62 affordable units to the town of Plymouth. It's not increasing their approval counts for new buildings that they're building. It's actually bringing them more in line as far as what should have already been done as far as affordable housing concerned. And I am interested on what the actual determination was for the final unit counts for the entire development, which is separate from what we're reviewing here this evening. I'd like to see the transformer and generator pad screened a bit somehow in some way. I'm not sure if that's being done in your landscaping plan, but when we talk about a transformer, I'm sure it's pretty big, and I'm sure the generator, the backup generator, is also going to be pretty large for the building. So I think it needs to be screened in some way, shape, form as far as that is concerned. So I know that's a long list of questions, but I will relinquish my time, sir, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just a quick question for staff. I'm assuming that the engineering review has been completed on this. Was it by staff or by a consultant?
So this did not go out for a peer review, it was just through the in-house staff.
Okay.
And typically too, before any building permit is ever issued, the building commissioner makes sure that all of their issues are addressed too, above and beyond what this board does.
Okay, usually we see a list of what their concerns were and determination whether they were addressed or not. So I'm assuming that this is either yet to have happened or they've been through some form.
So we have not seen those yet, but yes.
Okay. So my first question is on the local preference of 70%. How does that work? And most importantly, is it reported to the planning board, the planning staff? Who manages that? Who's responsible for making sure that that actually does happen? And just a little more information about it.
So the local preference is built into the regulatory agreement. It's something approved by the state. They have to approve everything prior to them being able to move forward. And then there's a lottery. The lottery is always held by a third-party consultant. The Plymouth Redevelopment Authority does it at times, and then there are 2 or 3 other firms out there that do it. So the state approves it, approves how the local preference goes, and then the lottery is conducted by a third-party group to run that lottery. Local preference usually just means that there is additional weight put on if you're a local resident.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know the complete details of that.
Okay, I think Mr. Gorsuch probably can speak to that when it's his turn to respond. And then I'm going to pile on in the expansion of the parking. What is the metric? What's the trigger that kicks that off? And I'm assuming that it's not just somebody's subjective opinion, like the parking's getting kind of crowded. There's got to be some sort of way that actually happens.
Keeps coming up. I've been waiting, but can I answer that one now?
Absolutely, please do.
Please, Mr. Hardman.
So I think there are 4 different groups independently of each other who can make that call. Grantham themselves can decide on their own that they need it and do it. AD Makepeace could tell Grantham that they need to do it. This board could instruct the building commissioner that it's needed, or independently the building commissioner can make that determination. So that would be any one of those 4 groups that could come up and say, yeah, we've decided it's needed and you need to add it.
Okay.
The only thing I would point out is if after complete completion of the whole project, 15 years from now, it might be hard for the town to enforce that, but certainly over the next 5 years as we monitor it, if this board or the building commissioner says it's needed, then it would be, again, you notify or the commissioner would notify them and they would have to add it.
Understood. So obviously we're well aware of the point at which they'll reach 100% or whatever their actual maximum expected occupancy is. None of us knows whether that's 1 year or 10 years from now. But I would expect that would be looked at some point shortly thereafter.
So just thinking we could add a condition that says 6 months after occupancy, they come back for a review to this board for the parking. That might be a good way to identify it and bring it back to this board, if that's acceptable.
That's acceptable to me. I think that's a great idea. And also in the vein of piling on the emergency access, I do see on the plans that there is a gate called for. I'm assuming fire department gets a key or it's a breakaway gate or something like that. I didn't see a detail. I looked quickly in the construction details and didn't see a detail for it. But just to be sure that we check that box that a lot of people are concerned about, that's going to be a cut through. And then the other question I had is I heard that it is going to be all electric units. Is that correct? Is it? I do see a gas service being run to the building. So just a little explanation of why there's a gas service for an all electric building. And those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So at this time, Mr. Gorsica, Mr. Hanian, Smoot, who wants to come up and start with the the responses. And do you want me to start asking the questions back, or do you want to just start answering?
I would just recommend let me go through, and then if there's something we missed, I do my best to write it down, and then I hurry up and write it, and then I can't read some of my own writing. I do want to address a resident question first, and that's related to the questions about water and wastewater, as far as financial stuff goes. I know I've said this before plenty of times. Our water company is a private. It's regulated by the Department of Public Utility. Those connection fees and water billing rates are in the DPU tariffs. We don't waiver from those. This is the same thing just like the Red Brook Apartments came in. So the usage fee for water is the same based on the amounts of water you used for everybody. There are other fees that are different, from a public fire service charge, private fire service charge, a meter charge. That's all dependent on whether you have what size your meters are, and then if you have a private fire service or not. So again, that's all regulated and kept the same. Wastewater is similar. The LOA is not paying for wastewater connection fees for Grantham. They're not paying for Grantham's group's wastewater usage. I will say, when you do look at connection fees for anything, you do have to keep in mind, and you have to consider, a 62-unit, one-bedroom, multifamily for age-restricted senior housing cannot simply be compared to 62 single-family homes. Candidly, not only is the user completely different, but same with the size of the units and the cost of the infrastructure and the maintenance of that infrastructure and the necessary replacement 50 years from now. Those are different, so all those dynamics are looked at. I will say, though, because these are private entities and its financial details, they're kept confidential. And when I say confidential, between us and between the users. And the folks here tonight, a lot of them know how transparent we are with financials. Some of them may disagree with what they say. Some of them may disagree in the timeliness of getting them, but we provide them. And those residents that ask, they know the right channels to ask that information. And consistent with past and current practices, we commit to sharing those relevant details using the appropriate channels. As it relates to parking and traffic, on the parking side, I do have to say, I'm not a huge fan. I know what we're showing on the plans, but we have to remember the zoning requirement is a half a space per unit, okay? We're now agreed to do above that because people anticipate a problem. We have to be careful when we do things like that because anticipating a problem only adds cost to a project. And a project that's affordable like this, adding cost to it then makes it more difficult for someone like the Grantham Group or anybody to perform. The fact that we're doing double the amount of parking that's required, and the fact that we're showing existing space for more parking, that's fine. Those are what were agreed upon and discussed. I just want to say, I think we need to be careful, not just us or this project, but putting that level of restriction on people based on an anticipated problem that may or may not come. And Grantham, if I'm speaking out of line here, their experience with this type of housing is about 60 to 70% of the residents actually have vehicles. We're not talking about 2 cars per unit. We're lucky to see 1 car per unit. So I just wanted to be clear on that. And from a traffic perspective, as with any new development, adding a home, multifamily, commercial, whatever, traffic does increase. But we have to remember that Red Brook was built to handle more traffic than we're seeing now. The total traffic counts for Red Brook are on full build. We're not at full build. So yes, traffic will increase, which should be anticipated when you're moving into an ever-growing community. And I would just point out details in the traffic memo that we submitted to this board a few weeks ago for our last meeting. It just talks about that in more detail. So if you have any questions, I would ask you to read those and let us know. So the questions, there were other questions. The emergency access. So in full disclosure, we had a conversation with the fire department. They want the access. We'll have further conversations with them as the style of gate and the lock. Typically what we've done when we have gates, fire department, they get a Knox box. They have their key, we put the key in there. They come and they open when they need it and they take the key. But we'll have further conversations with them just to make sure that all aligns. I think the detail on the site plan show like a chain that goes across. But we'll coordinate that all with the fire department. And again, Grantham, if I'm speaking out of line, let me know. As far as the surface treatment of that road, that can be explored. whether it's a grass pave or not. I think we're open to that conversation, see what it can be, what that entails. We were more from a developer standpoint of Red Brook, we're looking more of a gravel road than maybe just that larger stone kind of put on top, similar to what you see on some of the parking areas that we have, just to kind of that consistent look. But I think I can safely say that we're all open to having those discussions on what it should look like. On the electrical requirement, I know this was a question from you folks and from also some residents. Because this project is getting state funding and taxpayer money, it's now a mandate to make this an all-electrical building. So as far as what the components are, heat pumps, this or that, that's mechanical equipment, it's all electric, and I don't think there's any way to do heat without heat pumps or some form of that. And maybe these folks could talk more on that, but I want to be clear, that's a mandate. And again, I'm going to come back to the parking just because with these mandates, and I get where we're trying to go. And this is another situation where somebody is making a mandate to make a building all electric because of state funding for affordable housing. This, in turn, just goes back to the Grantham and costs more money. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying all these types of things we add or we contemplate or think might be a problem, you're ultimately adding cost to a project. And as Mr. Grandy said, ultimately it's the consumer and it's the taxpayers that are going to be paying for those items. The gas line, I'd have to look on the plan. The gas line should be going, I think, just to the generator than the building. So if it's going into the building, that's an omission because ironically enough, the generator is a natural gas generator. And it has to be much larger because it's an all-electric building. So again, another example of a generator that might have cost them a couple $100,000 is now close to $1 million because it has to support that entire electric heating system. The transformer screening generator, right now the location is shown closest to Wareham Road. That's still being finalized with the utility companies, but that will be screened. Just keep in mind, generator and the transformers do have separation requirements, so as long as those are met, but those will be screened. There is a chance that it could get moved to another side of the building, where if it does, frankly, it's screened by natural woods, but that's still being just played out. The local preference question, it's important to note this is only at initial lease-up. So there's no control after that. But in order for this to occur, the select board has to be the board who asks and makes the request. We've already been in conversation with the select board. They know that, and there's plenty of time to do that. But that request comes from the select board, and then between Grantham and the Town of Plymouth Select Board, they work on what that local preference is. That, to Mr. Hartman's point, goes to the state. That then gets reviewed and approved by the state and put into the regulatory agreement as far as how the lottery process goes. Let's see, parking, electric, outdoor space. Landscaping, the only comment I will make, and I know we are not, as a developer, building this or doing the landscaping. But I will say, and Grantham Group knows this, I don't think anyone, for the most part, around any of our buildings or things, the biggest complaint that we get by landscaping is they don't like that it's not colorful enough, and that's purely just because we're trying to use as many native species and less annuals and less things with color. But for the most part, I think our landscaping at Red Brook speaks for itself. As far as the screening along River Run Way and even Wareham Road will be dependent on what's going on. I think people know us enough that once somebody goes into an area and it starts getting put back together, we, as the developer, strategically will review those spots, strategically look at certain points of where we're going and what the look looks like, and if we feel it's needed, we then transplant trees. We transplant trees from lots that we know we're going to clear them on. So we're just taking an existing tree to put it somewhere. That stuff will happen over time. Obviously, we can't do that until approvals, until building permit, until they start construction. You lay out the limits, and then you see what you're left with. But again, from our history, I think people know in this room that that is something we do on a typical basis, I should say. Bear with me. I wrote them down on like 5 different pages. There was a comment about a 4th floor. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. There's no 4th floor. Those are just the architectural elements, those hats that Clay referenced. There won't be a 4th floor. There was impact. Oh, thank you. Garbage disposals, I appreciate that. There won't be any garbage disposals on this project. What Mr. Gravelin was referencing in phase 1 of the apartments, we didn't have any garbage disposals. Phase 2, there was a mishap, and they have garbage disposals. So speaking with the Red Brook Apartments, they know as those things wear out over time, they're not to replace those. So that was just a mishap. There's no requirement not allowing garbage disposals. Our operator discourages them, and so do we, but there's not a requirement. So it wasn't anything like from a regulation standpoint, it was just a mishap, which is unfortunate, and those things do happen. Stormwater maintenance, again, like any private commercial site, these folks, the owners, are responsible for their site. They're responsible for their snow plowing, their catch basin cleaning, their landscaping, their real estate taxes, their utilities, their water, their sewer. The association does not pay to maintain anything that Grantham owns, just like they don't pay anything that ADM Ag 1 Development, like the Meeting House, the Yellow Building, they don't pay for anything for the Y, and they don't pay anything for the Red Brook Apartments. Someone mentioned a comment I remember about the Situate building. If you guys Google that building, you'll see the large hats that that building has, again, to mimic that architectural element that the project team was talking about. If you guys remember any, throw them at my way, please.
The question as to whether or not those hats will create an opportunity for a fourth floor. Against
No.
No. Good. No. Plans for use of the undeveloped portion of the site.
Say it again?
Plans for the use of the undeveloped portion of the site.
Yeah, so the site's as large as it is to meet our density requirement.
Public meeting area for the residents, I'm sorry for jumping in, please.
So that's okay. What was that?
An area for the residents to congregate, sit, have a picnic, courtyard type situation on the exterior of the building.
Yeah, just like in all of our communities, we have an area outside for the residents to be able to sit, enjoy patio area, chairs, table, umbrella, something nice for them to be able to enjoy the outside as well.
Well, I don't
Similar
s-
to what you see outside of Red Brook as well.
I don't see it on the plan.
There might be nothing listed on the plan,
Yeah.
but there will be something there.
Well, there should be something marked on the plan to show it, so that it gets done.
Okay.
All right? I have another question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Mr. Grady.
We stated that 60 or 70% of the residents will have a vehicle. Some of them are going to have an electric vehicle. So is there charging stations on the site?
So there's a requirement from the state that we have, that we make it EV ready, and so we will be putting in, do you know the number, Mike?
You have to come to the microphone, sir, please.
Mike Gutierrez, Grantham Group. I believe the obligation is to put it.
Microphone. Talk to the microphone,
Sorry,
please.
apologies. I believe the obligation is to make 2 slots in the parking lot EV ready. There are incentive programs from the Department of Energy Resources for affordable housing projects to then subsequently build out charging stations. That will be a sort of phase 2 of this project, but at the very least, with the site plan, we will be making EV-ready charging spots.
So you're going to do the underground infrastructure to the spots?
Infrastructure has to be installed.
Right? Yes. What about solar? Any solar planned?
Yes, the ceiling, the roof of the building will have solar panels on it. Again, we're still working through that with the mechanicals. Since this is an all-electric building, there's a significant amount of infrastructure that's going to be going on the roof. Any real estate up there that is not occupied by heating infrastructure will be solarized,
And if the solar panels don't go on right away, it'll be made solar ready so they can't go on.
Thank you.
Obviously, a lot of questions were asked about the height. What is the height of the apartment buildings that are adjacent?
Yep, so each building varies a little bit. In the first phase, the waiver we asked for in phase 1 was 47 feet. And then phase 2 is 48, but realistically, phase 2 is further north. So the highest peak of one of those apartment buildings is 47 feet, closest by to the site.
Anything else, board members?
One more, I'm sorry.
Mr. Grandy, please.
I'm on a roll, I apologize. Is the pedestrian walking area here incorporated into the design as far as trails and pedestrian-friendly?
One second. I just don't want to misspeak. So currently, what's proposed for the building, there is sidewalk that runs along the head-end parking that's closest to the building. Actually, you know. And while she's doing that, those connect to the public walkways along the main roads of Wareham and River Run. Oh, I'll just stay here. So right now, the sidewalk on Wareham Road ends here. And then this portion exists, so this will connect here, which then has crosswalks here, and I believe there's one, I might be mispointing, but I believe it's right here. And then here's the sidewalks that will be in front of the head-in parking here and then wrap around the building. There's no proposed trail connectivity from here to the closest trail we have is to the east. Candidly, the elevation grade change is about, I'd say 50 feet. Not that you couldn't put in a trail, we've done stuff like that, but for this audience, or for this, maybe I'm being too naive here, but for this particular demographic, I'm not sure if it would be utilized, but I know it's something we could look at from a developer standpoint, not the Grantham, but if we find it a need to, we could always somehow connect something.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Corsica.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
So at this point, my comment is addressing the parking issue. I like Mr. Hartman's suggestion. My thought would have been a little bit more spread out and a little bit more lengthy. What I would suggest is that we have the Grantham Group come back and report to us annually from full occupancy for a period of 5 years. Because I think that they will find over that period of time the balance as to what the parking needs are, as to whether additional parking is necessary. And so if we do that, and we make that part of the conditions, then we'll have that as a tracked methodology so that we know from the Grantham Group with comments from residents as to whether or not additional parking is necessary. And we should put in a provision that requires us to make that determination, and if additional is required, we should be allowed to make that a definitive requirement that they will follow. So that is my suggestion for an addition, but I will open this up to a motion if anyone wishes to make one.
So if I could.
Please, Mr. Hartman.
Just some of the comments made, I'm not sure whether individuals agree or the majority of the board agrees, but just so I can go through what I think I've caught from individual board members. So annually for 5 years, after occupancy, they'll return to the board for review of adequacy of parking. Another comment was made about grass pavers for the emergency access. Another comment was made about providing additional screening for the transformers and generators, and again, they can return with a landscape plan with that. Present to the planning board the town engineer comments once adequately addressed. Show on the plan the public outdoor amenities, outdoor areas on the plan. Consider connection to the existing trail system, and that would be returned to the board when they come in with some of these other things. And then the final comment, some comments were made about landscaping and/or caliper tree. I'm not sure what you would want for that, but that was another one that was raised.
Mr. Granite, would you suggest that we do a more detailed screening plan?
More detailed landscaping plan for screening. That would be fine. And also the largest caliper tree that you can use that works with the development.
Could I just make a recommendation after we'll coordinate with the Grantham Group, obviously, and then
Yeah.
the town, but we can have an updated landscaping plan, if I'm hearing you right, with a little bit more detail on plantings and screening, the outdoor space, and then also the emergency access. And we can just combine one plan and have it for you guys, and that can be subject to.
That works for me.
Perfect.
I think that works, and obviously, any changing in the surface area for that access way will, of course, be subject to approval by the fire department.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. Yes, please note that, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bennett?
I didn't catch it. Was the outdoor amenity picnic area also included in
Yes,
that? Did we get
it
that?
was.
Okay. So all in one plan, that'd be great.
So with that updated plan and those recommendations, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with the conditions as Mr. Hartman has laid them out
Do I-
and discussed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennett so moves, Mr. Donaldson seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. We do have a presentation coming afterwards, but I'm going to take a 5-minute break as we've been going for quite a while now. So if anyone can get back in 5 minutes, please. Planning Board for August 14th is back in session. Next on our agenda, we have the Land Bank presentation. Mr. Canty, whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Kevin Canty. I'm Vice Chair of the Select Board. I've also been working with your chair, Mr. Bolton, as well as my colleague, Dave Golden, as well as his predecessor, Harry Helm, on the Select Board to collaborate to try and put together this land bank proposal that is going to hopefully be successful for our community and give us the opportunity to do some things that we cannot do presently, but that we would greatly benefit from the ability to do. And we're going to have a brief overview of all of those things tonight, and then an opportunity to answer questions that people may have. And this is only the first of several presentations that are going to, actually it's the second. We had a presentation by Mr. Bolton at the COPC not long ago. So this is the second of a series of presentations about this important initiative that we think will open up a series of opportunities for our community. So without further ado or preamble, what will a land bank do for Plymouth? So the land bank would provide a mechanism for buying land for the following main uses. That would be open space and recreation, including active recreation such as playgrounds, in addition to things like walking trails, things of that nature. Conservation and aquifer protection. So obviously we live over a sole source aquifer. A lot of people are concerned about overdevelopment and about the uses of the development that currently exist. So the more land you can preserve for open space, for recreational uses, for conservation uses, the more protection we can provide to our aquifer, and the healthier the longevity of Plymouth is and the sustainability of Plymouth. Also provides for the ability for affordable housing, and the land bank is targeting 60% area median income. We touched upon a little bit earlier with the Grantham Group project, how there were some different affordability options in that. 80% is kind of the standard in Massachusetts, but 80% area median income for Plymouth puts us in the same price point as places like your Quincy's, your Cambridges. It's just not realistic for a Plymouth family at Plymouth wages and Plymouth area wages to be able to reasonably afford that. 60% is a good combination of affordable for the people living in it, but also affordable for the community to build it. Because if you get deeper into that, then it becomes much more expensive, obviously much more affordable, but we have to, this is a good cost-benefit nexus point, equilibrium point for us to be able to make sustainable housing within Plymouth that actually people living and working in and very close around Plymouth could actually afford. It also would provide for municipal uses. Part of the purpose of this land bank is to adjust in this community for its continued growth. The more this community grows, the more municipal uses it's going to have. It's going to need more schools in the future. We already have a lot of schools, but we've been around for 404 years. We didn't used to have as many schools as we have now. In 404 more years, we're going to need a lot more. So this will allow us to prepare for that. It will also allow us to do things like well sites, reserving future well sites and building wells if and when we need them, which obviously we will as we continue to grow. Things like fire stations, if we ever need something like a DPW annex. We've already got at the Cedarville Fire Station, we've got sort of a little satellite police station there, but you know there are other communities that have more, that are large, that have more than one police station. And as Plymouth continues to grow, it's not unrealistic that at some point we might not need just a room in the Cedarville Fire Station. We might actually need an annex or a adjacent police station. So that's something that we could prepare for and we could use, and would be tied into the continued growth of this community through the land bank, as we will outline. And it would do these things without raising taxes on residents, which is important because people are already feeling the pinch of taxes as they continue to rise. Well, we also hope that the land bank will tangentially slow the raising of some of those taxes, because the more land that is on the private market that's built on by developers outside the control of this community, the more residential development can be built, and the more drain on services, the net drain on services that residential taxpayers provide affects that tax rate. So if we can control that land, we can also sort of manage and level off to some extent some of that raising of the burden on existing residential taxpayers. So it would be funded in what way? It would be funded, of course, by the buyer of real estate, who would pay a transfer fee of between 1% and 2% of the value of property that they are buying. That fee, that 1% to 2%, is a range, can be adjusted by the Land Bank Commission to respond to the economic conditions on the ground at the time. Now, Mr. Bolton put it as sort of, this is your entry fee for entering into the Club of Plymouth. So everybody that's currently in this room who is a resident of Plymouth, you're already in the club, so congratulations. So you won't have to pay your fee because you're already paying your taxes. But for new people that are coming in who are going to be draining on services, who are going to be using the community and enjoying all of the things that we have, we're just asking for a modest fee. When you're buying a house, either paying cash, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, or you're financing it, a 1% to 2% addition is not that much in the grand scheme of things, whether it's a 15 or 30-year mortgage, or whether you're throwing down a big briefcase of money. But it does make a difference in the aggregate for the community to be able to do the things that we want to do and be able to control the land in the way that we want to do so. And the more land, of course, that is sold within the community, the more money the land bank will have for these purposes. And while we are unique in some ways in that we are a community that's been around for 404 years, but we are not a build-out yet. There are other communities in Massachusetts and around the country that have been around for a lot less time, and they are at build-out. At some point, we might reach build-out, and we might, at that point, want to reduce it to, say, 1%. At that point, so that's another reason you could do it, not just economic factors, but if there's less stuff for us to buy and we're just maintaining and we're taking the occasional parcel that comes up at that point, then maybe 1% would be more realistic. But we're trying to make this sustainable and future-proof it as much as we can because of the process that we have to go through in order to pass it. So there are a number of exemptions. I'm not going to go through all the exemptions in vivid detail. Because not all of them will apply to everybody. We're open for questions about individual exemptions that do exist. But some of the important ones that we want to highlight, but again, this is not an exhaustive list of the exemptions, is for affordable housing as defined by any town, state, or federal program. So I mentioned earlier, 60% AMI is what the land bank is looking at for that, but even if it were a higher, like an 80% AMI, the kind of the standard in Massachusetts, it's affordable housing, so it wouldn't require a fee be paid into the land bank. First-time home buyers, where all purchasers qualify. So if a married couple, for example, are buying a house and the husband and wife neither of them has owned a house in the past, they'd be a first-time home buyer couple. So they would all purchasers would qualify. But if, say, the wife had owned a home before, but the husband had not, then in that situation, all buyers would not qualify and that particular exemption would not apply to them. Intrafamily transfers, so you're passing within a family, charitable organizations buying parcels, and Plymouth residents buying a new but not an additional residence. So if you're a Plymouth resident buying a second home to rent out, or you are a North Plymouth resident, you want to have a summer home down in Manamet, you wouldn't qualify for this exemption. But if you're selling your North Plymouth home to move to West Plymouth, then that exemption would apply to you. And these exemptions only apply in all circumstances that we have laid out here when the parcel being purchased is going to be the principal resident of the person applying for the exemption. How will the land bank, or who appoints the land bank commissioners? The land bank will consist of 9 independent commissioners that are appointed by the following bodies. 2 appointees will be appointed by the select board. The COPC will carry the baton for town meeting, and they will have 2 appointees that they get to make. The planning board yourselves, you get to make 2 appointees. Congratulations. The Affordable Housing Trust gets to make 1 because of their buy-in in terms of they're involved in the community with affordable housing. So I think that's important. The Open Space Committee would have an opportunity to appoint 1 individual, and the Land Use and Acquisition Committee would also get to appoint 1 individual. Now, it's important to note that none of these may appoint any of their own members or any other members of these various boards or committees. And they also can't appoint any elected officials, including town meeting members. We want this to be an independent land bank commission that does its own work for the benefit of Plymouth, but is separate from the other branches of our government. And that's important for a variety of reasons, some of which we will touch upon in this brief overview. Why is the land bank structured in the way that it is? The land bank's independence is a core feature of it. It's not a bug. The land bank's decisions were subject to approval by any other town entity, including town meeting, select board, or the planning board. Then it would be considered part and parcel of the rest of this town's government. Land bank is special legislation, so we can't just unilaterally pass it. It needs to go up to Beacon Hill, to the State House, and be passed into law up there. And less independent proposals for land banks have failed at the state level. We do not want to fail at the state level. Plymouth needs this, in our opinion. Plymouth needs this land bank in order to be able to control its destiny. And we want to put something forward that is responsive to the current and future needs we anticipate, but is also passable at the state level. So we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. We think there's a lot of benefits to this particular proposal, but we're not saying that it addresses every possible conceivable issue because, frankly, if we had something that was that good, it would never get passed at the state level, and we need to be realistic. The state is also very wary of proposals it views as being anti-housing. There's a tremendous initiative within the Commonwealth right now on state level to push for more affordable housing, for more housing in general. You're seeing that with things like affordable housing bills, housing production plans that are being mandated, MBTA communities law, things of that nature. This board obviously is very familiar with that. Members of the public may or may not be. But overall, the land bank doesn't want to fail. We don't want the land bank to fail because it's being viewed in a way that is anti-housing. It is not anti-housing. It is trying to tie the continued development of this community to some of these other markers so that we can put, as it continues to grow and we need more open space, we can get more open space. As we continue to grow and we need more fire stations, we have the money for that. As we continue to grow and we need more affordable housing to make it more affordable for everybody, whether you're going to have an affordable unit or not, because affordable housing doesn't just benefit the people that live in it, it benefits the general market. This will allow us to do that. But if we fly too close to the sun like Icarus, then our wax wings are going to melt, and then we're going to fall in the Mediterranean and we're going to drown. We don't want that. So instead, what we want to do is make something that's workable, that's viable at the state level, and get that passed so that Plymouth has something it can actually use. So some people have and probably will continue to ask, in particular, why do we need a land bank if we have the CPC already? Well, there are some important distinctions of the CPC versus the land bank. We believe that the land bank can work in conjunction with and in tandem with the CPC, and they would complement each other and not compete with each other. The land bank, though, has the advantages over CPC of being able to operate outside the town meeting cycle. So because it doesn't require town meeting approval, and CPC does, the land bank could act on a potential parcel that comes on the market where the seller cannot wait for a town meeting to sell that parcel. And the land bank could buy it in a way that the CPC may not be able to do so. Now, obviously, we could call a special town meeting at any time. We've called special town meetings in the not-too-distant past for the proposed purchase of a particular parcel on 46 Sandwich Road. Didn't go the way we wanted, but nevertheless, we did call that. But calling a special town meeting costs money. It's not free. This is something that, because it intrinsically operates outside the town meeting cycle, it's not going to cost the town any additional money to pursue those types of opportunities as they come up. That's important. We have this form of government. We want this form of government that we have, representative town meeting, to work as well as it can for as long as we have it. But this is something the private market, the private entity, the private world does not operate on a 6-month town meeting cycle, and this community does. This lets us compete with the growth of this community by private individuals in a way that is realistic to the world that we live in, not just our system of government, but the overall world that we live in. And we think it's very important that it can be competitive in this way for acquiring land from those types of sellers. Affordable housing provided here is more affordable than that in the CPC at that 60% AMI rate. Now, obviously, that Grantham Group project was a CPC article, but most CPC articles are targeting that 80% AMI. And it's expensive to go below that. But if we target this specifically and then CPC can target the 80% or any of the other things that they want to do with their housing money, and Affordable Housing Trust has their bucket of money that they get to do what they want, then you have multiple entities, all with some funding sources, all addressing different affordable housing needs for different members of this community. And as we know, this is a diverse community with a lot of various needs throughout it. And we think adding this 60% AMI on a regular basis to the toolbox for Plymouth's affordable housing options is very important. And that would make a meaningful difference in creating actual affordable housing that, again, will not just benefit the people that are actually going to be living in it, but will benefit the overall market in bringing down housing costs throughout this community and benefit all taxpayers and residents. The municipal use purpose will also leverage the town's growth to meet the needs created by that growth. As I alluded to earlier, more residents mean more wells, more fire stations, more schools, et cetera. And this will tie the increase in population and the turnover of population over time, either through death and inheritance or through sale of real estate, to this land bank, to the continued need for services, the need to provide new services. And so that is a distinction from what the CPC does, which does not do anything directly with municipal use. And then the open space purpose is tied more directly to the actual growth of the community, the actual threat to open space, because it's not just on existing property taxes, it's on as real estate changes hands throughout the community, and as land that was previously perhaps privately owned and paying taxes, but now developed and sold at a higher rate, the money that's coming into the land bank will immediately be at a higher rate. Then you get a delay otherwise on the CPC money from future real estate taxes that's going to bring in. So it more directly ties open space needs to an open space funding source and allows us to address that in a more constructive and directly tied in way. So that is my brief overview of the land bank and about what the land bank is, how it is constructed, what it is intended to do. We are hoping that the planning board will support this initiative so that we can present it to town meeting. It is a goal, of course, of the select board to pass a land bank as well. So this is something that I think the two big town-side executive branches, boards should be in agreement on, and I hope they are. But I'm certainly available for any questions that any members of the board or even any members of the public may have. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Mr. Golden, and of course, Mr. Bulletin is up at the dais that can also field any questions that people may have. I don't know if either Mr. Golden or Mr. Bulletin would like to add anything at this time before I open it up to questions. But
Dave Golden, Select Board member. It's a great presentation by Mr. Canty. I do want to add, he pointed out that the land bank will operate outside of the town meeting cycle, but it won't supplant town meeting in decision-making for properties that are acquired by the community. So the land bank may be able to purchase a property much quicker than town meeting may have been able to do, but if the town then takes possession of that, for example, for a municipal use down the line, town meeting will still have to make the decision to acquire the property. Having come from town meeting most recently, I know that there will be folks in that body who are concerned about the land bank usurping the power of town meeting to make decisions about land acquisitions, and I just want to make sure that folks know that that's not the case.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will make one additional comment, although as Mr. Canty pointed out, when people ask the difference between the land bank and CPC, one of the, of course, critical aspects is where the money comes from. CPC funds are taxpayer funds. If we want to purchase more and use CPC funds, we need more money into the CPC. That means more taxpayer money spent. The land bank is designed as an effort to avoid putting that additional burden on the resident. As the former chair of the CPC said recently, he said, as much as we would like to do many things, the CPC does not have adequate funds to do all of the things that it would like to do. The goal of the land bank is to supplement the CPC, the Affordable Housing Trust, other sources. It's not to replace any of them, but rather to serve as an opportunity to support all of them. With that, unless the board has any objections, I'd like to open it up to the public for questions.
Steve Lyden, I have a couple of questions. I support the land bank. I think it's a great idea. I just want to get something straight. When the land bank purchases something, property or whatever, do they have to go to town meeting? No.
No.
So you bypass town meeting, okay. A lot of times, people in their will donate property and stuff. They'll still be available for the land bank to accept this? And the other thing is, I know CPC, I know where they get their money, and I know what they do with it, but tax title land, this is going to be a committee. I know they give it to CPC, they give it to open space. Could they give it to the land bank?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, and just to clarify in terms of like municipal use, so the land would be purchased by the land bank for municipal use, but town meeting would have to approve, like if we're going to build a fire station, for example, town meeting would have to approve that expenditure. So the land could be bought with the intention of building a fire station, let's say, and then town meeting could say, no, we don't want to build that station at this time. And then, the land bank could either use that land for hopes of a future fire station or could transfer it for another use. But the land bank commissioners do not get to make the absolute decision that a fire station would 100% be built on any given piece of land, for example.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Another point that's come up as well is in terms of the flexibility of the land bank, what the land bank can do versus the CPC or other town entities. The land bank has greater flexibility in how it uses its funds. For example, land bank can invest its money and earn interest, whereas we have other instances where the town is not permitted to do that. The land bank can use its funds in the same ways that the town can. For example, the land bank can issue bonds. The land bank can take out loans. The only time that the land bank needs town approval to do any of that is if it is asking the town to guarantee its bonds or its loans. But if the town is doing it, if the land bank is doing it independently based upon its own resources, then it doesn't need town approval. So it does operate as an independent entity. And again, as Mr. Canty pointed out very well, the independence is critical to the state. The state considers opportunities for the town to use funds as a conflict. They basically say, well, for example, if the town were approving something, then would it use the CPC funds versus land bank funds? Well, CPC funds are taxpayer funds, land bank funds are transfer fee funds, so they would assume that you would focus on use of transfer fee funds and not use the CPC funds, and in fact probably reduce the CPC as a tax benefit to the residents. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to supplement what we're already working on. We don't have adequate CPC funds. We're trying to supplement those funds, only not by burdening the taxpayer further. We have someone online who wishes to speak. Please, go ahead. Oh, we can go. We'll go online.
Robert Little, are you interested in speaking?
Simply very interested in the conversation.
Okay.
Ms. Downs.
It might be of interest to research how the Nantucket Land Bank makes contributions to the community needs. Just a interesting observation.
I can respond to that. So we have actually, this is modeled on both the Nantucket and the Martha's Vineyard land banks with the added conditions of affordable housing and municipal use to make it a uniquely Plymouth land bank. But additionally, we have looked at their uses, including their tie-in, because both Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard maintain community preservation as well as their land banks. So we know that that can be working in tandem.
So, Stephen, it would be really interesting to see how the Nantucket Land Bank can make contributions to the affordable housing scene in terms of shared use of land, land bank land, and housing developments.
Currently, Nantucket,
that has not been happening.
Yeah,
but it has a future, and I think it has great prospects.
Thank you very much. Ms. Downs.
Hi. According to my husband, he whispered in my ear that you answered my question, but because he was talking in my ear, I couldn't hear the
You're in trouble.
Lorenzo Pizarro, he's one of my constituents. I'm a member of Precinct 17. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a representative of Precinct 17. So he was going to try to be here, but I said I would relay his email for you. So he says, as a resident of Plymouth, the concern I have with the land bank concept is the amount of borrowing authority the new entity will have. If it's strictly limited, then my concern is allayed. All the little bits of borrowing adds to the total commitments that have the full backing of the town of Plymouth via fees and taxes collected. I'm having trouble reading. Sorry. As an example, the CPC gets revenues, 1.5% tax plus state match, but in practice, the town ends up borrowing against the future revenue cash flows in order to fund large strategic projects. There is precedent for this land bank concept to borrow against future revenue cash flows. In my opinion, this is Lorenzo's opinion. In Lorenzo's opinion, he says it's not necessarily a bad thing. In our personal lives, we are all too familiar with borrowing taken out in order to buy a home that we just can't save that kind of money to make a purchase. The risk is when borrowing becomes potentially too much. So I'm sharing that on Lorenzo's behalf. And can I ask my other questions, and then you can guys go through them one-on-one? All right.
Absolutely.
All right. I've been in conversation with constituents regarding the land bank, and no surprise, but the prevailing concern is the 2% buyer's fee. From the point of view, actually, that it may affect our abilities to sell our homes, that it may limit the pool of people available to purchase our homes. Could you please offer me insight on that? And I think you told me, Steve, but I can't remember, how much revenue per year do you anticipate this to generate? Thank you.
Well, I'll answer the first question, and then I'll let Mr. Cansey address the second. So answering the first question, the land bank's borrowing is different than the town's borrowing because the land bank doesn't have the full faith and credit of the town behind it unless town meeting separately approves that. So the land bank's borrowing would probably be limited in terms of what it can put up based upon its assets, most likely the properties that it holds, not revenues in the future. So it's not borrowing against future revenues. It would be borrowing against existing assets that it holds. So the town would never, so the residents would never be at a loss. There would never be cash coming out. The simple fact is, if they ended up with a circumstance in which they were short on funds, they would end up having to transfer property to cover that. But that's part of what they're doing, is they're trying to balance this out. And again, one of the advantages is they can also invest their funds as they go along. They can put the funds in bonds. They can put them in other safe savings accounts, so they can at least continue to generate their revenue. without having to do the additional borrowing. But the borrowing would more likely be limited based upon the fact that this is an entity that doesn't have necessarily a calculable future. The town can roughly calculate what its tax rates are going to be and what its tax generation is going to be each year based upon things, unless there's a dramatic change in property values. That's when rates change. But for the most part, they can predict what their revenues are going to be, and they can then borrow based upon that. And the borrowing is based upon the fact that there is a guaranteed somewhat history. That's not the case with the land bank. The land bank is based upon sales. Some years there may be a lot of sales, some years there may be less sales. So the borrowing will be limited. Moving to your next question, I'll let Mr. Canty respond.
So I could offer a couple responses, one of which I included in the initial presentation, but I'm happy to reiterate because it was a lot of information. So the total cost is 1 to 2%. So again, if you're buying a house with a mortgage or you're buying it with cash, 1 to 2% on the whole purchase price is not that much of an addition. If you are financing it over a 30-year period, you're not even really going to notice a 1 to 2% increase. But additionally, over time, the assets that it will provide to this community in terms of the coverage of services, in terms of the open space provisions, the affordable housing, and the affordability in Plymouth, is going to create a series of assets for this community, not liabilities. And communities with a lot of assets are attractive places for people to live and buy homes in. So I think, if anything, it's going to increase the pool of potential buyers who want to live in a beautiful community with a lot going for it, as opposed to a community that is in sort of a spiral of decline because of rising residential tax increases, residential growth that's out of control. So I think, if anything, over time, the market for homes in Plymouth because of this will significantly increase, and we will see that the cost of 1 to 2% is not that significant on the total cost of a home.
I did some back of the napkin math, so don't hold me to this, but for the calendar year 2023, there were 570 single-family homes sold on MLS in the town of Plymouth. So based on the median sales price of those 570 homes, at 2%, I believe that the land bank would generate $7 million just from the sale of single-family homes. Now, again, that's back of the napkin math. We have to include all other classes of real estate transactions in there. So I think you could certainly see a much larger funding source than we generate through the CPC. And of course, we have to account for all of the transactions that are taken out based on the exemptions that we provided for, but it will be in the millions annually. It will be in the millions annually. 7 million. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't do this. You have to come forward.
So Jeff Downs, the one that Lori threw under the bus a minute ago. So I guess my first question is to David, following up his statement. He used a median average price. That's assuming that every real estate transaction will be taxed to get to the 7 million. But I thought there was a threshold where houses wouldn't be taxed. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the way the land bank is structured is to be as flexible as possible. And this also goes to the question about what happens in terms of the risk to those trying to sell properties. The goal is to try and have those who can afford to pay the fee pay the fee. So there is an amount that will be set by the Land Bank Commission under which, if a property is sold, under which it will be exempt from the fee. Same goes with the flexibility in terms of the 1 to 2%. So for example, in an extremely hot housing market, when all of these properties are being sold for very high dollar amounts, there's no need to really worry too much about the 1 to 2% fee. The same goes with in terms of addressing affordability. If the average price of a home in Plymouth is going for, and it is about $700,000 now, you're not keeping people out of the market by adding a 2% fee on that. So the way the legislation is drafted, our proposed legislation, is we have a floor put in there. That right now it says that under no circumstances, no matter what happens with the market, will we be putting this fee on any property selling at $350,000 or less. However, on day one, the Land Bank Commission can turn around and say, nope, that number is now $600,000. If the market tanks, if we have a, heaven forbid again, not a real bad stretch and real estate market really drops, the Land Bank Commission can turn around and say, okay, it's going to be a 1% fee and it's only going to be on homes over $1.5 million. Again, anyone walking in a bad market paying $1.5 million is not going to worry about a 1% fee. But we won't be dissuading people from being able to sell their homes in a bad market as a result. And again, this is the flexibility the Land Bank provides by having an independent commission, as opposed to the CPC, where if we wanted to change any numbers, it requires an act of town meeting.
So I hear you, and I guess I would make an opinion. I think the 375 that you mentioned as the floor is too low. I think the floor should be set much higher than that, given house prices and the desire to help people find affordable housing. And if we're truly going to generate $7 million of revenue from this, it seems to me that there's room to move that floor much higher than 375. Second thing I would say, this 1 to 2%, as a taxpayer, I'm very skeptical. Governments always find a way to spend money. So I think it will be 2% and not 1%. That's just a skeptical taxpayer in me. Towns, like any other government, just find any way to expend revenue. A couple of things from the presentation earlier. It was implied, but maybe I missed it. Does this only apply to residential real estate transactions or commercial as well?
Commercial as well.
Okay. So that would be much higher than what you're suggesting at 7%. I guess independence is a good thing, but as a resident, I don't see the control that is necessary for an organization like this. As a resident, if I don't like what the select board does, I have the ability to vote them out. If I don't like what the planning board does, I have the same opportunity. With this independent board and the way that it's going to be structured, as a resident, I feel that I don't have any control over this board. So I would say independence is good, but there needs to be some governance in there where I, as a resident, have the ability to have some say in how the board is acting. There were a lot of great uses for the land that were thrown up in the presentation: open space, affordable housing, municipal, and all those things are great things. The question I'd have of the land bank is, how do they control or ensure that all of those areas get funded and this doesn't just become another tax revenue source for the town to go grab land for municipal purposes? I could even hear it in Kevin's excited voice about schools, fire stations, blah, blah, blah. How do we make sure that affordable housing and open spaces also get their fair share? Or vice versa, how do we make sure there's a good balance across that? With the CPC, there's, set percentages have to be to each area. Perhaps the board this group should consider a similar approach. And then some minor questions. Land will be purchased. A lot of times there's maintenance costs associated with those land. I assume those maintenance costs would come out of the land bank and not be shifted to the DPW or somewhere else to mow or fix or whatever. And then, Steve, you were talking about taking on debt. Same question, does the debt get paid out of the land bank funds and not the town? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll answer a couple, and I'll then defer to Mr. Canty and Mr. Golden for some of the others. Part of what we're talking about here is this is not government. You keep saying government will do this and government. This is not government. This is an independent body. That's a very important aspect here. This is not taxpayer money that is being spent. This is coming from... Please do not do that, sir. That's inappropriate. And please don't do it. This is not taxpayer funds. Thank you. Do you have any other questions that you want answered? Mr. Canty, Mr. Golden?
So this is just to be clear, this is for residents at home. This is a transfer fee is the source of funding, not residential taxes, not other forms of taxes. So in terms of one of the ways that the funding sources will be balanced out amongst the multiple uses is the fact that there's different appointing authorities with different priorities. So you have the Open Space Committee gets an appointee, the Affordable Trust gets an appointee, Land Use and Acquisition gets an appointee. Then you have your Select Board gets 2 appointees, your Planning Board gets 2 appointees. So you have a diversity of people, of other boards and committees, putting people on to the land bank. And obviously, the people that they're putting on would be consistent with their policy objectives. So people that, if an open space committee, currently constituted or futurely constituted, is evaluating a potential appointee, they're going to ask, I'm sure, what are your priority? What are you going to do for open space if we put you on the land bank? Similar with the Select Board. The Select Board has a variety of policy objectives as things develop. Like right now, the board has a significant policy objective for affordable housing. And there's also, we have some municipal needs that we know as well. But that hasn't always been a priority for the Select Board at various times as the town has been growing, and it won't always be the priorities for the board in the future. So as your board changes and as people are elected or not elected to that board, those priorities are going to change, and you're going to see the people that they evaluate for these positions be vetted to act upon the policies of those boards and those committees over time. So that's the check. And that way, the CPC is structured in a way to work for 351 communities throughout the Commonwealth should they choose to adopt its provisions. This land bank is designed in a way to meet the present and future needs of the town of Plymouth. So we don't want to, we think by having the appointing authorities be the ones that are determining the policy objectives of the people that are on this land bank commission, that's important. But we feel that putting just percentages like that, that's sort of the one-size-fits-all Commonwealth of Massachusetts solution, and this is a town of Plymouth solution. And I would also add that there are checks and balances about the way that these commissioners behave themselves, because there are in the land bank authorizing statutes provisions for the removal of commissioners that act out of line, that move out of town and refuse to leave, that do things that are inappropriate and or don't follow the rules. So it's independent in the sense that they get to make their own decisions. They're not considered part and parcel with the rest of town government. But it is not so independent that it is untouchable, that they can act as if they are above the law. They can do whatever they want. They can say at their hearing, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to follow the rules. And then they get appointed to the commission, and they can completely ignore all of that and just act with reckless disregard. There are provisions and protections to prevent that from happening, and that will be strictly enforced should any malfeasance or misfeasance come up over time. So this is a responsible, I think, well put together proposal that tries to anticipate as many issues as we can at this time. Now, one of the reasons we have this is so detailed and with so many provisions is passing special legislation is difficult. Updating special legislation is difficult, but it's not impossible. So if in 50 years we need to change the land bank in some way, we could always do special legislation to change it in the future. But we think we've anticipated, to the extent that it's realistic, as many of the possibilities as we can and as many of the guardrails and protections that we need to put in there. But it's not impossible to change this, it's just a little hard. So we're trying to get it right on the first go-around because it is difficult to change special legislation, but again, not impossible to do. So if in practice, over time, we find that there are problems with it, it could be adjusted as needed through the same process that is originally passed by.
Also like to add, as we talked about the appointing authorities and the appointees, one of the things we wanted to ensure was that we have the best possible candidates come forward to serve on this very important body. Making that an elected position puts an immense hurdle in front of many, many people. This body has all run for a townwide elected. Mr. Golden and Mr. Canty have run townwide elected office. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, and now, more increasingly, a lot of money to run for townwide office. To do 3 people per year to run for that would be an immense challenge for this town to come up with. We have a shortage of people running for town meeting. Imagine having to run town-wide for this body. We would lose people who would otherwise be willing to serve and would be incredibly well qualified to do so because of that hurdle. And that's something we didn't want to have happen. Mr. Canny.
I'd also add to that I think there's a limited stamina for voters to vet all the elected positions that are townwide. I think like select board tends to get a lot of criticism, but and gets a lot of questions from candidates that are running for it through the election process. I think those debates are watched and forums are watched at a high level. I think your school committee gets a high level from people that are involved in the schools, but that's a smaller section of the community. I think the farther down the ticket you get, candidly, the less people are actually vetting the candidates for those particular offices. I think that there's a lot of great town meeting members, but I think all of us that are involved in town government know that there are some precincts that are not competitive for town. There's only a number of candidates that run for those seats that are always elected to those seats, and they can always get put back on. Then there are some precincts where there's always more candidates than there are seats. But there's not a lot of vetting the farther you get down the ticket. And these appointing authorities, having it spread out by this and having them be interviewed and having them appoint people consistent with their policies, I think realistically is more critical analysis of these potential candidates than you are going to get by adding another town-wide elected position to an already crowded field, an already complicated form of government where already a diminishing number of our voters, sadly, are even showing up to the polls to vote on it. So I think the level of oversight we're going to get and the level of protection, it's also very, 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 very difficult to remove an elected official that acts with malfeasance or misfeasance. It's almost impossible because of the high voter turnout provisions under the charter. You need like 20% voter turnout in order to do that. And when we're proposing to change the entire charter of the community, it's only like 15.5% came out to do it. So I just don't think it's realistic. Whereas this way, if you have someone that gets on there that doesn't do a good job, much easier to remove them should the case arise. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it to the board now. Mr. Grandy.
Okay. Just heard from 3 guys that actually put this thing together and worked hard, and I absolutely agree to it. I read it previously and made a few suggestions, and I think this is a fantastic thing that we really need to do for the town. The CPC is already operating at a negative number as far as funding is concerned. So over the next year or 2 years, the CPC may not vote to approve all the projects that may come before us with the group. I can only speak for myself, where I say I'm not happy with debt and running in a debt. That's not a good thing for business or anything. Really shouldn't be operating that way. But there are times when it really needs to be done. Now, as far as checks and balances are concerned, you heard a gentleman sitting in the back there mention that he can vote people out from the planning board, the board of selectmen. Well, the board of selectmen and the planning board and the housing authority are appointing these members. So if you're not happy with the way that the select board is appointing members to this particular land bank, then you can remove the selectmen that are appointing the individual to that position. So there's a check and balance as far as that is concerned. And I agree with Mr. Bolton and the other members from the Board of Selectmen here this evening. There is no taxpayer money involved here. This is based on sales. The number may be 350 or 375. It may be 500. It all depends on the land bank commissioners that are appointed in place to set that dollar figure. And those meetings that they have are subject to the open public meeting laws. So you can actually be there to talk with them, and obviously they'll be able to let you speak on the microphone as far as any meetings are concerned, as far as the land bank is concerned. So I did have, there is only one time that town meeting would be involved, is if, like Mr. Bolton stated, that the town would have to back any type of a loan that would require a 2/3 majority on the town meeting floor, as far as the language is concerned. So everything that's been stated here this evening by the selectmen and Mr. Bolton, I agree with, and I will be supporting this land bank presentation this evening. So, and it's getting late. I'm sorry if I get a little irritated, but it's already 10:20 and I got to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning. So, thanks, guys. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Donaldson.
I just have one question. Can you hear me?
Try this one.
I just have one question. Will the land bank be able to help resolve the issue of property that the town is currently holding or have that we're not using for development, or we're just holding on to it?
So, in most instances, every instance I could think of, unless it's already in the care, custody, and control of the select board, which has been put there by town meeting for the disposition of the parcel, if it were, say you had a list of tax title properties, the land bank could buy those, but if and only if town meeting had put them into a docket of parcels that the land bank could potentially buy off the select board if they wanted to. So there'd still be that extra step. The only ones that wouldn't apply to that would be, like I said, any ones that, for whatever reason, town meeting already transferred to the care, custody, control of the select board, and for whatever reason that sale never went through. But that would still involve a step of town meeting, just one that already passed. But it is something, Mr. Donaldson, that we do have a large list of tax title properties that the town is not using, some of which we may want to continue not using, but some of which we may want to, rather than putting them into open space right now where we're eating the money that's owed on the tax bill, we could use the land bank to, often we don't get a lot of money for some of these. There's some of them that were taken for $75 of back taxes back in 1941. But you could still get $75 off that piece of property if you transferred it to the care, custody, and control of the select board to sell to the land bank. Obviously, more modern properties that have been taken off the tax rolls because of tax title properties would be of more value. But that is something in particular we could do. And then there are other parcels that may have one or other uses in the past that we might want to put into the land bank for one of these designated purposes. But again, it would require town meeting to transfer it in that way in order to do that.
I just want to say I think this is well thought out. It's a great plan from the moment that Mr. Bowman and I have had conversations about this, and just doing my own research on other towns that are coming up with the same concept. I think this helps protect us when I say us, the town in development, and giving us a little bit more control and leeway and access to do the things that we need to do as a town in regards to our growth, in regards to the properties that we have in town. So I am for this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm absolutely, as I'm sure you gentlemen know, I'm in favor of this. It actually was part of my campaign for running for this seat, my support for the land bank. I have, to respond to Mr. Little somewhat, I'm very familiar with the Nantucket Land Bank, having actually done work for them and seen the tremendous benefit that can provide, and that they are restricted to only open space. So the flexibility of this land bank, I think, is much more advantageous to the town. I do have two small questions. I think that I sort of know the answers, but I kind of want to get them read into the record. Is they're not restricted to land only. Land and buildings on the land obviously would be available for the land bank to acquire. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
So, for example, like if we had a parcel with a building on it that was adjacent to the DPW facility,
Correct.
we could pick that up
Correct.
when it was available for sale instead of
Or you
waiting
could
for.
buy a raised ranch in West Plymouth if you wanted to, yes.
should the committee so deem it necessary. And also along the same lines, so the land bank would have the ability to dispose of land, say it acquired for some particular need that now no longer exists, and it determines that the best use of this land would actually be to sell it to either a private entity or a corporation or whatever it may be.
Private entities are a different issue because we are still we're using funds that are set aside for these specific purposes. So the likelihood of saying, oh, we're going to purchase this land for municipal use and we decide we're not going to use it for municipal use, that's fine, but we wouldn't be selling it off to private developers. It would then either become an open space property or it would become an affordable housing property. So that's part of it. So again, there has to be thought process. You don't just randomly go buy everything. There has to be the same process that CPC does or the town does when considering it is what is the real value for this if we're not using it for something we know immediately, we have an idea down the future as to its alternatives. But we don't buy, it would behoove the Land Bank Commission to be thoughtful in its purchases as a result.
Right, they can, as Steve indicated, because they're not taxes, they can invest their money. It would be better for them to invest their money to devise revenue if they don't have a use for it than it would be to buy parcels and flip them, because that's not permissible. All they can do is they can buy it for one or more of these designated uses, and then if that use is frustrated or no longer necessary, or there's a change in circumstances, they can shift it to one of the other uses within their sphere, but they can't flip the property.
I see. So just to be clear, they would not have the right to actually sell the property. So, I mean, some scenario may come up where an adjacent parcel of much greater value, a much greater benefit to the town becomes available, and say the private owner is willing to sell it in return for acquiring a piece that the land bank had already acquired. Would the land bank actually have the right, the legal ability to sell property that it acquired?
It can sell property as long as it's being used for one of the approved purposes.
Right.
So could it be sold to a developer for affordable housing? Yes,
Right.
it could. But it could not just simply be sold to a developer who is going to put market rate housing or a commercial building on it.
Right, or it could be, say it's an open space parcel that the CPC really wants, but there's not a town meeting scheduled in the time frame that CPC can get town meeting approval. In theory, the land bank could buy it and then sell it to the CPC for an open space purpose, if that's what those entities wanted to do. That's another example how it could work in tandem with the CPC. I don't know that that situation would come up all that often, but in theory it could happen.
Correct. That was my point. In theory, almost anything could happen. And
Right.
does the land bank, with the tremendous flexibility that we've built into it here, have that additional flexibility to dispose of land that does no longer meet its needs?
Yes, but only, again, like within those designated purposes. So we shouldn't buy a 40-acre parcel just in case we want to use it for one of these purposes and then find out in 2 years, like, oh, it's actually would be better as market rate condos. No, we couldn't do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further?
You can go ahead and speak, Robert.
Hello.
Yep, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Canty, Mr. Bolton, and particularly Mr. Bennett for acknowledging broadening the scope and the flexibility. The dilemma that the Nantucket Land Bank is enduring is limited scope. So 2% of every real estate sale goes into acquiring land essentially for open space, which takes supply away for other important uses, which today is affordable housing. And I think there's an opportunity for there to be some land sharing between the affordable housing organizations on the island to land share. But you guys are striking a new course, which is phenomenal. It's exciting. You're writing the script, and you're learning from great experiments and making them better. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Hampton?
Yes.
Go ahead, Hampton.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. As chair of the Land Use and Acquisition Committee, when space comes out of Chapter 61, for example, in addition to the right of first refusal, it's my understanding that the town has the ability to assign to other parties the acquisition, their right of first refusal for the acquisition of the land. For example, it's been done previously with the Wildlands Trust, for example. Would that, for the protection of open space, previously undeveloped land, would that be retained as part of the ability of the land bank?
Yes, it would. Hence the reason that the Land Use and Acquisition Committee was identified as one of the appointing bodies for the Land Bank Commission, because this is a very important aspect, and there are certainly going to be times in the future when one of those open space parcels, one of those Chapter 61 forestry, agriculture, etc., lands comes available and the town does not have the ability to purchase it immediately, but the Land Bank Commission may.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none. At this point, I'm going to ask for a motion for the planning board to sponsor the land bank article at town meeting.
So made.
Mr. Grandy moves.
Second.
Mr. Bennett, second. Further discussion?
So I assume that's sponsor and support?
Sponsor and support, yes. All in favor? It is unanimous. That is the last item on our agenda this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone, for your hard work tonight. The meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.